Good evening again. I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, May 15th, 2018 to order with roll call, please.
Kraus?
Here.
McAlpine? Here. Kostler?
Here.
Cavelli? Here. Weinhammer? Here. Betts? Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now move to the public comment portion where anybody could make a comment towards the Committee of the Whole. I have a couple people sign in, but I think, Barbara, you already said your piece.
Yeah, I did sign in.
Yeah, I got it on this one.
Oh, okay.
You signed on the Committee of the Whole.
For letting me share my little mind.
Oh,
It's fine. It was
Awesome.
good information. Thank you. Keep us posted. Chris Lester?
I signed in just for number 6, public hearing, just in case there are any questions.
Okay. Joanne Clyde, I think she was here for the JC's thing, and I think that she's gone. I think, is this Sean Wheeler?
Sorry, I guess to speak better than I write. I wanted to just say I'm a friendly face here, so let's dive into it. I unfortunately had to go to the township meeting last night too, which I was hoping would be different than this, and this wasn't. I think we need more parental roles from our trustees, but you know, I think you guys have more in common than probably me and my wife do, and yet we don't do this in front of our kids. But what am I here for? I'm here for the Adopt a Highway program. I had my first cleanup personally 2 weeks ago. Thanks, Eric. It's been a blast. I called around, as I'm sure many of you did. I don't care what other communities do. The 4 or 5 places I called, McHenry County, Lake County, Huntley, it's all free. I got laughed at by a guy when I asked how much it cost, but I understand. We do what we got to do. So cost aside, I man-houred my cleanup from just 3 Oaks. It's 1.5 miles, so it's really 3 miles if you include both sides of the road. You know, $400 or $500, I think, is what our cleanup would have cost. I think if you hired up landscapers. Now, that might be generous. I like to overvalue my time, but, you know, as a group, I think it's about $400 or $500 worth of stuff. Now, if we don't want to do that as a community, I think we're really just cutting our nose off to spite our face. I don't really know. Chuck, I believe, is the issue this came from last week. I've met him once. I have no personal relationship. I don't care if you guys don't want to renew my road next time. I hope I can keep doing it. I'll still clean the roads. What I find in other communities, although irrelevant, is that they do support this. They, in fact, are offering it as an incentive to organizations, business, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whoever wants to show that your organization supports the environment, supports the community. Now, if we don't want to recognize it, it's fine. I don't care. I'd personally pay for the sign. I'd still do it. I want to be up here to say that, you know, my application was 2 weeks before his, and nobody said anything about it. And I'm here because I don't want to see people treated differently. I want to see continuity and fairness, and at the end of the day, I'd still do it without the sign, but I think that it's a great, what we have is a great program. I mean, Eric's clearly an undervalued asset because the guy's awesome. Him and Courtney are knee-deep in this, talking to me about doing the cleanup, getting me involved, helping me put things out there, and I should imagine you guys are very proud of them for what they have put together here. Not every community has the resources to have one of these. They push it to the county or to the township, and we have our very own. 3 Oaks has been spotless because of a certain organization a few weeks ago, and I hope we can keep this program. Signs or no signs, I just wanted you all to know that I hope we can treat people equally, if not fairly, okay? And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Next, I had Jim Thomas signed in, but I think he spoke before. So is there anybody else that would like to address the Committee of the Whole before? Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comments. Next order of business is the presentation from our police pension fund.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Sergeant.
Mayor, Village Board, while they're getting set up here, this is more for informational purposes here. Just wanted to have the Police Pension Fund have the ability to appear before you and provide an overview and help answer any questions that you may have. Want to try to do this on an annual basis, here to have the Police Pension Fund come before you, talk to you, and allow for that Q&A. So turn it over to Mr. Winkleman, Mr. Sporl, and Representative, I believe, from Lauterbach and Amon.
Yes, Bob Reeds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. I think everybody knows me here. My name is Chris Winkleman, and I am a sergeant with the police department. Let me just get this up here. Make it bigger.
Or Courtney, right? You're not challenged when it comes to technology like some of us.
There it is.
And this one, right? Really doesn't like that. So we
Chris,
gotta go-
can you just view it just without
Yeah, I will.
expanding the screen?
I will.
Maybe, for whatever reason, I guess it doesn't like what you put together.
It's temperamental.
Yeah, hopefully you will, but it's going to be a little challenging. Some of these things get a little bit busy. If we can't make it big, it's going to be hard for everybody to see it. So a lot of stuff to go over here, but I think we can get through it.
Okay, well, my apologies for that. So I am the president of the pension fund. I've been on the board for 6 years. I also have Chris Sporl here. He's been on the board for approximately 4 years. He's kind of our checks and balances for investments. He's a business owner focusing in investments and accounting. He's also on the Montgomery County Board. He also helped District 26 through their financial times. Then we also have Bob Reeds, who is the pension board's actuary. So the purpose today is just to kind of give you guys a little one-on-one on the pension fund, where we're at and where we need to be.
Yeah, if I could just interrupt for a little bit. He's not going to say it, so I will. Actually, he missed the board. I was also one of the founding members of the Carry 26 Education Foundation. I'm still on that board. I serve on 3 boards right now. And in my role in business as well, and sitting on all these boards, I can tell you that there has been no better board run than what I'm on right now with the Police Pension Fund. Chris, in his 6 years or so, has upgraded, overseen the board, upgrading our investment advisors, upgrading our legal counsel, and Lauterbach and Amons, the accounting accountants for the fund, and we've increased their role just because they're the gold standard in the business. So a lot of credit to Chris for what he's done over the last 6 years.
Thank you. So the current funding slide that we're looking at now, this just kind of tell you what we're putting into the fund. So this is the contributions from the village. Prior year was $720,000, but this year it's going to be about $815,000. There's about $10,000 more that's coming in. When I started about 6 years ago, it was about in the high 400s.
Yeah, and I have the honor or task, I guess, of actually talking about this slide. If you don't mind, I'm going to walk right over to it and just talk a little bit about this. This line here shows up at the top is the actuarial liability, okay? What does that mean? It's one of those terms of art. Actuarial liability, you got to think about what the police pension fund actually is. Thank you. As a community, we come together and we say, okay, we're going to hire some police officers, and those police officers, when you come on board, here's the deal. Besides the salary, we're going to get you a retirement benefit. And that benefit, you put in your part, so we deduct the percentage of pay. We're going to put in our part, and then we're going to invest the money so that we can figure out at the end of the day, when you retire, at your salary at that time, which is kind of a scary thought. We don't know what your salaries are going to be at that time. But at that time, a percentage of that we're going to pay for the rest of your life, okay? However long that is. That's kind of scary too to me. We don't know that. Oh, and by the way, we're going to increase this for inflation. We don't know that. Oh, and we're going to do it for all of you. So it's going to be people going in the fund and out of the fund. A lot of moving parts. That's why we hire the guy with the tie over there to help us with these numbers, okay? And they do a fantastic job.
Can I interrupt you for a moment, please?
Sure.
Just from watching videos online, for the people who are watching at home, is it possible that you could speak over there and then use the mouse to show us what you're talking about? Because if someone's looking at this video at home and you're pointing to things, it might be hard for them to see it. But if you use the mouse over there, when he does the video, that's what they're going to see.
The answer to the question is maybe.
Okay,
Depends on how
thank
good I am with the mouse.
Okay.
So I do this right here. Oh, okay. So this line right here that you see, what that means is we take all those obligations that I just described. We're going to pay you all this money when you retire. And that's the amount we should have saved in order to fund that, okay? That top line there. Now, unfortunately, the bottom line here, oh gosh, see? The bottom line there, that's what we actually have, okay? And as of today, you can see we've got about half as much as we need, okay? Obviously, that's not good. The money that goes into this fund comes from 3 places. Number 1, we ask the police officers to put in some money. Number 2, we put in our share. Number 3, we invest it and get some returns on that investment, okay? Hopefully, we have a good amount in the fund so that the market actually is providing more of the money. The more the market actually gives us returns, the less we have to ask from our taxpayers. What we ask from the police officers, that's a contractual liability. That's something that is set. They put in their money without fail each and every paycheck. Okay, so we're about 50% funded, and we've got other challenges too with our investments because we are under mandate from the state of Illinois to be at least 90, preferably 100% funded by this point right here. This is 2040. That's our target. That's what the state of Illinois is making us do, okay? Not a bad thing for us to be doing, but that is a target that we have to hit, and we've only got 3 sources of funding to actually make that work, okay? I'm going to take it anyway.
This next slide, if you look at the blue charts or the blue portion, that's saying basically what our benefits are. That's what's going out of the fund. And then if you look at the green, that's the unfunded liability. So you can see that because we have to get up to 2040 where you have the highest column, that we have big payments coming ahead to get to that 90% or 100% funding for all of our obligations. And then once we get there, the payments drop off. We've already taken care of that unfunded liability per state statute, and then we just have our normal benefit costs. Any questions on that? Here's just a quick summary of the active members, people who are eligible for retirement. See, we have 2 that are eligible now. Then in 1 to 5 years, we have 4. And it kind of spikes, goes down, and then we have a lot who have many years to go.
If I may, just as a numbers guy, you can go back to that. Okay, as a numbers guy, if I can use this mouse, what concerns me is this right here, okay? We've got, what's that? We've got 7 members here at 21 plus years in history of tenure, I'm sorry. And that means they're closer to retirement. And they're closer to collecting benefits. Now, when they collect benefits, that's money coming out of the plan, and we're trying to build up the assets in the plan. Oh, and
You feel
sorry,
better.
I had that completely backwards.
Yeah, you feel better now.
So I feel a whole lot better now. Thank you.
So moving here, this is the retired members and their ages. We had, probably going back 5 years until maybe a couple years ago, we had 6 additional officers retire. Before that, we had 6. So now we're paying out a total of 12 people.
Maybe I can redeem myself on this one. So if I'm reading this right, big if, 55, 50 to 55, having that many retirees means they're going to be on the rolls for a long time. I mean, there's just no question about that.
This slide here, the benefit payments. So right now, we're a little bit above 500,000, I think about roughly 550,000. And this is saying if we are projecting out what the fund is going to earn, you can see what the benefit payments are going to be going up. The chart goes to about 2045. Once again, 2040 is the critical number here. So we have to start planning for the future. There's probably going to be some difficult decisions to be made.
Is that per year? Is that what we're looking at?
Yes, that's per year, each year.
Okay, and this is our statement of position, most recent. As you can see at the bottom line here, if I can point this, there it is. Okay, this bottom line here is how much we actually have in the fund, and which, 11.6 million. When I first came onto the board, it's more like about 8.5 million, so we've come a ways since then. Up here you see, here are the additions you see. From the community, the 800,000 so, from the members, about 200,000 so, and the net results from the market, that's the 7.25. And obviously, we want the market to pay. I mean, the police are going to pay, the employees are going to pay what they're going to pay. We'd rather have the market pay more than the taxpayers. We've got some deductions here. These deductions are mainly going to be the benefits that we pay out to the employees. And the change in position here, the 1.1 million, actually that's the best I've seen since I've come on the fund, so that's good news. Okay, this chart here is meant to be more absorbed than read. It's pretty busy, so I'll just describe it basically. Up at the top here, you see equity and fixed income. Okay, that's the percent of the fund that's going to be invested in equity and the percent that's going to be invested in bonds. So we got stocks and bonds there. Each of the columns is going to represent a certain amount that we're going to, oh, thank you. Okay, a certain amount invested in each. Now, mind you, when I came on the board, we were not at 10 million at that point. At that point, at 10 million, we're very limited as to what we can actually put in the stock market, okay? You still look at some of the investment results that go way back, and we simply couldn't take advantage of a lot of the recovery we had just because we weren't at that $10 million level. And you can imagine the thought in my mind that the state of Illinois is going to come upon us and impose on us how to manage our house financially. You can imagine my first thoughts, and it was not good. We have since gotten to the magic $10 million mark, and we were able to take advantage of the bump in the stock market. As a matter of fact, just before the presidential election, we hit that mark, and we chose as a board to put the pedal on the metal at that point, and fortunately we did. That's why we got the results that we did. Now, the second thing I want to point out is along the side here, these are different asset classes, okay? Different possible ways to invest our money between fixed income, different kinds of equities, internationals, real estate, et cetera, okay? And along the right column here are long-term rates of return we can expect to see from that. Now, this information has been provided to us over years. This is what these different sectors have done for us, okay? And what we're doing here is we've had a couple of different investment possibilities put together as to, okay, if you invest a certain amount, what kind of returns are you going to get? And the bottom line here is the weighted average returns with different kinds of investments while abiding by the laws that Illinois imposes on us on where we invest. This is a very tough investment environment right now because, frankly, we're in a rising interest rate environment. We're used to, in the last 35 years, a decreasing interest rate environment, and that hurts both decreasing helps stocks and bonds, increasing hurts stocks and bonds. So that's why I say it's a tough environment right now. We're invested at, and you can see the expected rate of return, it's at 6.47%. Okay, our mandate says 6.5, and the natural question is, why aren't you invested at something much higher than that, where expected rate is more than that? And the answer to that is these averages along the side, where'd the mouse go? These averages along the side take into account the long term. What we're trying to do is capture certain segments of the market as they're swinging from one to the next. We're not day trading, obviously. I mean, we're talking about longer term trends, 4 to 7 years, things like that. But we do expect where we're at right now is going to perform better than the 6.47% for the next 4 to 7 years, okay? Any questions on this?
So the important number there, everybody to keep in mind, is the 6.5%. That's a critical number, so is 7.5%. What this chart shows here, if you look at that lower line, that's what the village is contributing based off an assumed rate of return. So the actuaries say, hey, for the next 20 years, your fund is going to earn 7.5%. The village has their own actuary. The pension board has their own actuary. Our actuaries are saying that the 6.5 number is the most realistic number. Okay, the village is using 7.5%. The difference between these two is about $200,000 to $300,000, and you can see that that gap remains. Why is that important? That number by 2040 is going to be about $8 million. Okay? That's really the crux of it. That's if you want to have the best funding, you should go with the 6.5%, which is what our investment manager is saying. So you can use 7.5, you could use 8, but you're really padding the numbers. And that's kind of the issue that I guess the board would have to address.
If I can, in our company, we do taxes, accounting, payroll, and retirement plan administration as well. And we do have a number of clients who have defined benefit plans, which this is what this is, okay? And frankly, the rate of return we advise our clients is 5%, just to let you know. Now, I don't think we're in that kind of position. We have to take on a little bit more risk in order to have a more realistic ask of the taxpayer. Frankly, I mean, the fact that we're at 50% funding now realistically means that, you know, taxpayers of the past perhaps should have been paying more, and taxpayers of the present are having to pick up the slack. The longer that continues, the more we're asking taxpayers of the future to pick up the slack. And that does not make Cary a good destination necessarily for young families.
Thanks, Chris. I think you've had a chance just to look at the numbers here. Once again, this is the differences between the 6.5 and 7.5%. You can see how that's every 5 years, those numbers go down in the column. Shows you what those differences are, and that adds up to that about $8 million by 2040.
Yeah, so just for full disclosure, you can see what the pension fund actually has done over the last several years. 2016 was a particularly tough year in the bond market. That was just before the time we could actually increase, or I should say decrease, our bond holdings. You know, with interest rates going up, the price of bonds goes down. That's just the way it works. And so because we were invested more than we wanted to be in bonds by law, those are the results that we got. So, but you see that most recently we had the 7.3%. 2018 isn't done. We expect that to be a pretty decent year as well. But as you can see, just by eyeballing the results, and you know, these are by investment professionals, okay? I will tell you that they're all going to invest in diversify when they invest. We're not going to be swinging for the fences because that's irresponsible to do. But you know, we have to take on a certain amount of risk to get a certain amount of return. And if we are diversified, we're going to get somewhere, you know, in these kind of results. A lot of people have heard, oh, in 2017, the stock market went up 20% or something like that. The market went up 20% or 25%. Okay, that's great. When they say the market, what do they really mean? The market, to me, is stocks, bonds, international real estate. People think about that. They're only referring to one small segment of the market. The S&P 500 is 500 stocks. That's not the market, okay? So that's why you're seeing some of the results that you're getting. That's what professionals are going to do. And, as fiduciaries for the plan, we have to invest in a reasonable way. So we're going to get more moderate results.
This is the last slide. This is similar to the slide about 2 ago. Basically, it's just going year after year for about 5 years with those different rate of returns. Foster and Foster would be the village's actuary, and then Lauterbach and Amon would be the pension funds. It's kind of a checks and balances. So you can see there's some pretty big differences there. Something for the board to think about. We would like to thank you for allowing us to present. We'd like to do this every year. The pension fund is strong. We can probably do a little bit better. Are there any questions?
Two questions or maybe clarifications. Can you indicate for those that might be watching how common this problem is in downstate systems, fire and police pension systems? Maybe you, the actuary. This is not a problem that's unique to Cary. I think you made the comment, the taxpayers in Cary, this isn't a desirable place to be necessarily when we're playing catch up, but I believe this is a fairly common circumstance, these unfunded liabilities for all municipalities, and clarify that the unfunded liability doesn't come from this board. That's a problem that this board inherited from many, many previous boards, and they're fixing it over time.
To address the first comment, it is a common problem. We're not really considered a downstate pension fund. We are governed by the state of Illinois. When you hear about a lot of the pension funds that are going bankrupt, that's not referring to a pension fund like us, an Article 3 pension
I'm sorry, I just meant outside Chicago. So, but all those systems that sit outside Chicago.
Correct.
So.
There are some funds that are struggling and they're down in the teens and the 20s and the 30% funded. I would say that we're in pretty good shape, although we've been around 50% funded for some time, and we need to start moving up. There are some municipalities that are at 60, 70, and a few are up in the 70 and 80s. So yes, it's not like we are in dire straits. What was the second question, sir?
Well, there were a couple, I think, just to clarify. This is the unfunded liability in this pension system, and for that matter, the fire pension systems, is a significant obligation for municipalities. Municipalities don't have a choice as to whether or not they fund based on an actuarial number. That's a mandate for municipal boards to address. And they're being charged, this board, all municipal boards, are being charged with fixing a problem they did not create. They're required to catch up at this point and pay for unfunded liabilities that were not of their making. So.
That's correct. I would say the assumed rate of return over the past 6 years while I've been the president has been unrealistic. But I could say that that number that is currently being used and has been used the last few years, and not sure what the future will bring, that is still an unrealistic number for the rate of return.
Right. Yeah. Michael, now let's talk.
Just a few points, if I could, just to clarify some of the issues. I think it's safe to say in at least the last 4 years that we've discussed this pension issue many times. Mm-hmm. We realize, and we have talked about the fact that we would like to reduce our 7.5% estimated rate of return to attempt to get closer to the 6.5%. Matter of fact, we've instructed our actuaries to provide us with the numbers to give us a rate of, if we brought it down to 7.25%, 7%, 6.75%, hopefully to get us to the 6.5% level. Number two, one of the issues that we deal with here in the Village of Cary is we're a non-home rule community, which means that we're subject to tax caps. I think probably many times people would have liked to increase the contribution to the police pension fund by possibly raising the property tax. However, it was out of the question because we're subject to the tax caps. That's not going to change. Unfortunately, we have the police pension issue to look at. But aside from the police pension issue, we know just from a capital improvement standpoint, from our own operating budget, that there are many balls up in the air at one time. So as best as possible, we try and figure out where to take those dollars and distribute them as evenly as possible. We're aware of the problem. I can't disagree with any of the numbers that they put up there on the board. Clearly, the difference between our contribution rate is the difference between the 7.5 and the 6.5. If we can narrow that gap, we won't be talking about such big differences in the future. If there's any other questions, I'll be able to answer them.
I'd just like to add to previously, before some of the elected officials, I believe, were on the board, I think, and Mike, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, the village was at closer to 8%. We're probably at 8, 7.75. And over time, we've tried to lower that as best that we can. But you heard what Michael had to say here is, when we continue to lower it, I mean, obviously we have to come up with those dollars from some point to cover that difference. So we want to continue to look at it here. And as Mike had added, we've asked our actuary to look at some of these other scenarios, and I think we'll be ready to talk about those later this year.
Thanks, Jake. And just to clarify to the board, we are not here to say that the village by any means is not trying their best to fund it. This is really an educational platform to let you know you guys have to contribute the money, and we kind of manage that money and kind of request the money from you. So the board has made significant improvements. We have lowered, like Jake said, the assumed rate of return. It was in the 8s. There was an extra payment, I think, a couple of years ago for $400,000. Like I said, when I started, it was at about $6 million. So we are doing good. We thank you. Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Chris, thanks. Now moving forward to a public hearing to consider the approval of a variance for an off-premise residential development sign for the Westlake residential subdivision on the property located at 3118 Three Oaks Road. Is there anybody here that is involved in this particular petition? Or is this, yeah, no, he's in the back. Is there anybody that has an objection? Otherwise, we could wait. If there's nobody.
No comments.
Yeah. Nobody here that wants to talk about that sign? Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mayor, Village Board. The request this evening is for a variation for an off-premise residential development sign. Under the village's sign regulations, residential development signs are allowed on the property where the residential development is occurring. In this instance, the subdivision, Westlake subdivision, which D.R. Horton is currently completing the build-out of the approved development from 2003, does not have frontage along Three Oaks Road or Route 14. The original development included some various outlots, which is subject property highlighted on was part of that original development, including the auto zone and then also the Westlake Shopping Center further to the east. And as the subject property is not developed yet, the developer is seeking approval this evening for variance to put a development sign on that property so they can advertise the construction of the new townhomes in the rear of those properties, the commercial properties. The proposal is shown in the slide would be for a 32 square foot sign. That would be a double-sided sign that would be perpendicular to Three Oaks Road, that would have visibility on both sides, so it would direct people back behind the commercial developments to the residential development. Further back in the development, as you somewhat see in this portion of is where the current construction is occurring in the subdivision. The townhome or models are being constructed here, and there was a parking lot that was constructed in the development for customers that wanted to come and view those models. I was in that area, but there is some signage that the developer has already installed that's allowed per ordinance in that area that would further direct traffic to those locations in the development. Within the sign ordinance, there are various standards that need to be met in order to support a variance, which are summarized on the slide as the board is familiar with. In very summary, the sign is impractical or impossible built under the standards of the article. The applicant has not taken any action that has caused the extraordinary condition. Relief proposed will not alter the character of the locality, and the relief proposed is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the regulations. As mentioned, and based on analysis of the site, the proposed residential development was part of a larger development plan for the area that included the commercial lots along Three Oaks Road. I believe the original intent was to provide advertisement for both the commercial lots and the residential area behind it. Now with the commercial development being completed and the residential development having been stalled for several years, believe that the relief that's being requested here would be in harmony with the code and would provide direction for development. Also, with the property currently being vacant, there's would not add to additional signage in the area that would create an overburden of signs in that corridor. Therefore, should the committee as a whole determine that the signs comply with the variance standards, they should recommend approval of the following motion. Approval of variance for an off-premise residential development sign related to the Westlake subdivision for the property located at 3118 Three Oaks Road, subject to the conditions that are listed in the staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, and petitioners also here that can answer additional questions regarding the request.
Anybody have any questions on this? They need visibility.
Yep.
So is everybody in any?
I just have a question. Is it typical where it says the sign shall be removed within 4 months after completion of construction? Is there any reason why they would need to keep it up 4 months if it's all?
It's a provision in our code now for development signs. So that just kind of reiterates what our current code regulation is. So it gives a time period once construction is completed that those signs need to be removed.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay.
I'm good.
Is there any other discussion on this matter? We can go ahead and close the public hearing. Just for a consensus, can we put this on the next village board agenda under the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Brian. Next, moving forward is a discussion on the Feinberg Court right-of-way sign, monument sign right at 14 in Feinberg Court.
Thank you, Mayor. The request or the item on for discussion this evening is focusing on the existing monument sign that's on the corner of Feinberg Drive and Route 14. You can see on this slide there's a bit of the history related to the sign. The original sign that was constructed was for the village board approved a lease with the Buford One, which is the Wall Street restaurant ownership group that was originally developed back in the Feinberg Court area. That lease allowed that restaurateur operator to construct the sign, but also to sublease various portions of the sign to other tenants that were back within that cul-de-sac area. In 2012, that restaurant closed, but in 2013, the rights to the sign were sold to Miss Patsy Fritz of Realty Executives, and the lease that was issued to the original operator was back before the village board. An amendment was issued that would transfer ownership of that lease to the new ownership group. A condition of that approval, or one of the terms that was included in that approval, was that the top 2 panels of the sign be made available to any future use of the restaurant building. In 2014, thereabouts, Galati's relocated from their downtown restaurant location into the former Wall Street building, and through various discussions that worked with Ms. Fritz, and Galati's were unable to come to agree on terms as far as a lease of that sign. Therefore, since that time period, Galati's has not had visibility on the sign. Coming to this year, again, the original lease was for a 10-year term. The amendment did not modify that time period for the lease. It just changed the ownership. So in January of this year, that lease term became due on January 31st. Back in December, the village notified Ms. Fritz of the desire not to extend the existing agreement. Wanted to encourage discussions between the two parties that are involved in this issue to try and reach some acceptable terms prior to the village entering into a new agreement or new right-of-way permit for the sign to move forward. Through various discussions throughout this year, it's been an ongoing process. We've been discussing it for about 5 months at this point. The parties have still been unable to come to reach some agreement as far as the leasing or design of the sign, and believe that we're basically at impasse as far as trying to find an acceptable solution for all. So the purpose of tonight's discussion from staff's perspective is we're really looking to bring this matter back to the board just to seek direction from the village board on what the next steps you would like staff to pursue in this case. There is some documentation which is in your packet, which both from Mrs. Fritz and also from Gladys has been provided as far as their standpoint of where they're at on their viewpoint. But they're also here as well, so they can provide some additional discussion on the matter. But basically, staff is seeking direction as far as what the next steps would be from our perspective as far as options you'd like us to pursue. In the memo, there are a few options that have been provided for consideration just to help to guide some discussion. There basically are 3 options that staff has explored or included in there. One is to renew the agreement, kind of carry over some of the existing terms or possibly modify the terms that are in there that would establish a new agreement or permit for the use of the right-of-way in this location so that the sign can continue in its current state, but then potentially establish more use requirements for that sign and the right-of-way. A second option would be just to terminate the agreement, which would, if that was the board's desire, would require the removal of the sign. Obviously, that option would require the elimination of signage for the Feinberg Court businesses that are currently advertised on the sign. That would put all the businesses back there in kind of an even playing field, if you will, but would take away visibility that they do currently have that would not be available to them under existing sign regulations as they don't have frontage along that roadway. A third option, which it could be considered for discussion as well, would be the village to acquire the sign, potentially take ownership of the sign. The village would then be responsible for managing the sign on behalf of the businesses in the court area, and it would add additional costs to the village's perspective as far as the maintenance and upkeep of that sign. Just for reference through discussions this year with the parties involved, sign costs roughly cost about $1,200 a year. That includes the existing lease term rent, so annual maintenance, insurance, et cetera, would be roughly $600 to $700 for maintenance of that. But replacement of the sign for a new sign of this type, a brick monument sign, talking to various sign companies in the area, would cost roughly $10,000 to $13,000. So that's kind of the overview of what I have as far as the sign. I'm more than happy to answer any questions or have discussion on the matter. Those are 3 options that we've looked at from a staff's perspective. And I'll be, again, happy to answer any questions, and the petitioners or members of both parties are here as well that can provide additional feedback or comments or answer questions as well.
Do you have any preliminary questions for Brian at this time? Otherwise, I'll have the both parties come up and discuss.
I just have one because most of us weren't on this board when the original agreement was struck, and it's pretty general, but what was the original intent of the village leasing the land for this sign? What was the intent of the allowing that to happen? Because that's not normal for us.
Correct. It was generally to provide visibility for the businesses back that are in that court area. The restaurant, when it was originally developed, and the other office buildings that are back there were developed around that time period that the lease was approved. They had no visibility along Route 14, and it's typical of that type of development. It's the type of where it's located at. There's no frontage along a major arterial. With the restaurant being back in the cul-de-sac area, it didn't have visibility for capturing the vehicular traffic that's along Route 14. It was designed to provide some visibility for those businesses there. Wall Street was the one that approached the village to install the sign. And then as part of that, they were also willing to provide visibility for other businesses by creating a multi-tenant sign.
Now, did Wall Street charge for the other panels?
Yeah, I believe they did. I don't know the exact rent that they charged, but they did charge for
I think
business.
it says 1,000 in the letter.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm just looking here.
Any other questions for Brian? Patsy, would you like to come up and kind of talk about your sign?
Well, I bought it, as you saw from that, in 2013, and I was real aware of the right-of-way lease. And, but nowhere in there did it say that I had to give the top portion of the sign at no cost. I was charging $1,000, just like Wall Street did, for the bottom 1-foot panels. And that's happened for 10 years. And I asked repeatedly, was there any option? I didn't want to sell my sign, but I wanted to work something out with Galati's. And Galati's 4 times said they would not lease at any cost. In fact, at the meeting at the mayor's office, we offered it for free, and he still didn't take that. He wants to own this sign. And I don't understand that there isn't another option. I bought that sign. And I offered the top for free, and it still was refused. And there was a lot of other discussion in and out. But from day one, when I met, I wanted to work it out. And at the meeting with the mayor, it was talked about that 2.5 feet would be fair for Pilates. That was discussed. And then to keep Dolce right under it at 18 inches, and then the remaining businesses as they were. But I don't really think that Pilates should get the top for free year after year. I mean, Wall Street charged for the bottom panel all along, and I think it should be established. I mean, we've used a 1,000 linear foot for 10 years with no disagreement with anyone. And the top part is, in my opinion, more valuable than the bottom part of the sign. So when I originally quoted $1,500 per linear foot, I thought that was normal. I mean, and I know there was a discussion that other businesses give that sign for free to anyone in there. I called and talked to the owner of the sign at Starbucks, and that is owned by the corporation that owns that strip mall. And they charge a triple net lease of $3,500 for 1,600 square feet. And that's plus CAM and taxes. So they're paying $4,500 a month for 1,600 square feet, per 1,600 square feet. And they do get to have a business on that sign. But it's a profit margin for that corporation. It's good business on their part. Our sign is owned by individual, I mean, our cul-de-sac is individual owners. It's commercial condos, and it's a different situation. And I just say again, I don't understand. If I have to sell it, I should have been told that. I asked that if there were no other options. I wanted to be told if I had to sell it. And no one, and I asked 5 times, no one would answer that. And so, and I'm not a very good public speaker, so I'm very nervous.
No, you're doing fine.
But
You're doing fine.
anyway, basically, that's it. I mean, I'm always willing to work with Pilates. I just didn't want to sell the sign, because then there's no control. If digital was put on the top and all the rest were divided up, as he suggested, equally for all businesses, there's 20 businesses in our cul-de-sac. So that would mean a 1 by 2 foot section for everyone in the cul-de-sac, if it was done literally like he was saying, which that looks silly. There's no benefit to a 1 by 2 foot sign on Route 14. You can't possibly read it even if you're at the stoplight. So, and I guess that's pretty much it. I would like the permit to move forward, even if it was only for just the year, if we could get through this year. And with the proposal that I gave, that Pilates has the 2.5 foot on the top, they can put up whatever they want. And I'll redesign the Dolce sign and move it down. And that makes common sense to me. But the real question is, if you aren't willing to let me keep my sign, I wish I'd been told, because then I would have been a good business person and negotiated the best price. But now there's no option for that, because if I'm not allowed to keep that sign, you can be sure that only one that's going to offer to buy it from me is Pilates, and it's going to be at a real discount price. So.
Before we give Pilates an opportunity, was there anything in Brian's presentation proposal, was everything that you thought, was that all factually correct leading up to where we are right now?
Pretty much, yeah. And that's the way it is now. That's proposal and then Pilates proposal. And, but I just think it's important to know that it was, I mean, that it really did represent all the businesses that wanted to be on that sign. I mean, State Farm didn't want to be on the sign. I asked them. I asked Northwest Insurance Services. I asked Jack and Jill of All Trades. They didn't want to be on the sign. And so this sign isn't designed to show 20 businesses.
Good.
So, and the part about having that free is no, I mean, that really puts me in a, why would have I ever bought a sign to have a 1x2 on there for myself? I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I didn't buy this sign as a huge profit margin. I bought it where I could continue to advertise my businesses. And so I guess that's it.
All right, thanks. We'll call you back up for other
I have a
questions.
question though, Patsy. When you mentioned you asked 5 times about selling the sign, at what point were you asking that, and when did
From
that
the
happen?
very first meeting with Jake in the village, and I asked if he will not negotiate a lease price, do I have any other options? I don't want to sell my sign. And I came back with that question many, 5 times, 6 times, and I was only told the village, you need to negotiate with Pilates. And finally I was told, if you don't, you may not like the board's decision. I mean, I felt bullied at that point.
No, I don't think, can I interject
If I could
something?
just add something, I mean, the goal here from the village board direction here was hopefully to have those parties work something out here, and that was the goal from the beginning. The village staff doesn't want to see the sign go away. We think that provides good visibility for the businesses down the Feinberg Court area. And our goal all along here has been for those parties to negotiate out something that will work in their best interests.
Right. At no point did we say that you had decided to sell the sign, because we never thought that you would be, I mean, we'd be putting you in a situation to sell the sign. At no time did we say or pressure you to sell the sign. So there was no need for us to say that, because we weren't offering that as an option. As Jake had said, when we sat down, we had a very productive meeting, I thought, between you, Brian, myself, and the representatives from Pilates. I thought we made some good headway, and we started down a really viable path. And then somewhere from that point on, it's kind of broken apart. So that's why we're here now. But, I would like to hear from Pilates about what their thoughts are on this. And then I have some notes from our original meeting that I'll ask Brian to verify with me as well, just so that everybody knows exactly what's being
Well,
talked
on the
about.
viable part, when we were discussing, the things that we really did determine, that Vince even said, that 2.5 foot was fair.
Absolutely.
But it came down to the same thing.
Right.
Even when we offered it for free, they didn't want to do that. They only want to own the sign. And he sent me a text saying that if that doesn't happen, I'll petition the board to have your sign taken down. And, that seems like information that I should have been told. Or that shouldn't have been put
Well,
in the text
he
to
wasn't
me?
speaking on behalf of the village. So, I mean, that might be something else that he had talked about, but at no time did we say that that was going to happen. And I think we made ourselves pretty clear at that meeting that our goal was to come up with a livable agreement for both you, actually all three of us, the people that have maintained the property, you own the sign and Galati's being a tenant, or vice versa. We were kind of going back and forth on those things. So we had made some great headway in that meeting. So if you wouldn't mind having a seat, and I'll have,
But 5 times I asked that, and I was never given an answer, so it'll be interesting to hear the other side.
When was
Sure.
that first initial meeting?
what,
When was your first initial meeting with the?
In January.
Yeah, we had
of this year?
met, correct, Director Simmons, myself, Ms. Fritz, and her attorney, I forget his name. Yeah. We had met and went over the desire for what the village would like to see here, and we made it very clear that we don't want to see the sign go away. And the board direction at that time was to have the parties work out some kind of agreement that hopefully worked for both you, Ms. Fritz, and Galati's representatives.
But on the 4th meeting, you said you were going to set another meeting, and you called to tell me, no, you aren't going to set it because he's not willing to lease.
Yeah, and we had to talk to the village board. I mean, I couldn't say what was going to happen or what wasn't going to happen. At that time, it seemed like you all were going towards impasse, which is, where we are now. And we need to talk to the village board about where the village board wants to go with the sign. So, thank you.
thank you, Betsy.
I need some clarification on the, Patsy said that she offered it for free. Her letter says it was the first year. Is it the first year or unlimited for free?
No, first year.
Okay.
And,
Patsy, could you come up to the microphone because this is all being recorded.
oh, okay. To move it forward, I just wanted the sign to be accurate and presenting to everyone. So I offered, actually, my daughter, Kim, said, well, what if you have the top for free? And I'm in agreement with that for 1 year. You said you were only willing to give me a permit for 1 year. So why would I address that?
Okay.
Other than the 1 year. And if I had my way, I'd ask for at least a 3-year permit. But that was said that I'd probably only get a 1. Right.
Well, that's up for discussion here, so.
All right. Do you have any other questions?
No, that answers it.
Sean?
Village Board, thank you.
Could you just state your name for the record, please?
My name is Sean McHugh. I'm a resident of Cary, and I also am Vince's business partner at Galati's Hideaway. Our position at this particular point is we feel as though we have exhausted every avenue with the sign. It's going on 3.5 years now, and we feel as though that we are an anchor within our local community, within Feinberg, within the Feinberg Court. We reached out to Patsy many times over the years to try to find some sort of resolution, to try to, obtain our rightful spot on top of the said sign at Feinberg Drive there. In the initial First Amendment to the right of lease, the second paragraph outlines that once the new owners of Galati's or of the old Wool Street, that rightful ownership would be passed down. And it says clearly right here, I have some copies of the lease if the board does not have the copy.
We have a copy. Where are you talking, what subsection?
Okay. So as you can see there, that, we would be able to obtain.
Can you tell me where you are specifically referring?
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's the First Amendment right of leaseway. Sure.
It says Exhibit A.
Correct. Exhibit A, paragraph 2.
Okay,
Correct.
Exhibit A, hold on, I'm looking at. Third page, okay. Very good.
Let's let him finish now. I'd be more than happy to let you.
Yeah, you're saying number 2 where it says sign?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is correct. It is expired, but at that time it was in force, and she was actually in violation of not giving us an opportunity to be on the spot. We've made several different contacts with her. She initially referred her to, or referred myself to her lawyer, who I met with her lawyer, and I explained our position, and her own lawyer agreed and said he was going to go back to Patsy. And he said, Sean, yeah, you're right. Just like that. Stood up in my office and said, yeah, you're right. I'm going to recommend to my client that you work out a deal to purchase the sign. Didn't hear anything about it. You know, weeks and weeks went by. Repeated phone calls to her attorney went unanswered, and each time they were working on something that was going to allow us to make some sort of resolution, which I had to go back and talk to Mr. Galati, my partner, and explain the position that we were at. Second of all, we don't believe that that sign was put there for profiteering. Just don't agree with that. If we took ownership of the sign, we believe everybody should be represented on that sign equally for free. We are all like, we're all in this little Feinberg community tucked away, and we don't believe that anybody should profiteer off of it. So if we obtained ownership, we would allow everyone to be on there for free for however long we own the sign. We don't want to make money off of it. I understand Patsy, she comes from the real estate background, and I can understand why she sees a financial benefit to that, but at Galati's, we don't. We see everybody as a community, and it's tough over where we are. You know, as you read through my little packet there, it was brought to my attention that each spot was roughly about $1,000. And Patsy told me that she would be more than willing to lease that top spot back to us for $8,000 a year. To me, that didn't sound very fair. So we declined that. Then we started reading through some of the paperwork and so forth like that, and you know, decided that, you know, we would elect to just purchase the sign from her. We would go to all of our neighbors in our community, allow them to be on the sign for free. We would cover all the expenses every year. We would even be willing to pay the village a premium as a permit, whatever that was going to be. Because on any given weekend, we can have 2,000 people come through our doors. 2,000 people. And you know how many people tell us, we couldn't find you. Where are you? It's disheartening, you know? And, you know, I respect, you know, Dolce Spa is Patsy Fritz's daughter's business. And right below that, there's a little open segment on that sign. Patsy would actually use that for rental purposes. We don't agree with that at all. So then we started looking into it with our accountants. And we started factoring in the amount of lost revenue that we're losing basically on a daily and yearly basis. And it's basically coming out that these numbers are probably underestimating it, is that if we lose 5 cars a day worth of traffic, those are 5 cars that are going through our community back there, seeing her daughter's businesses, seeing all the other local businesses that maybe have limited exposure to Route 14. So we figure that we're losing about 5 cars a day, and average tab is going to be about $50 is what we looked at. So on any given year, we're losing about $90,000 worth of revenue, which directly impacts the village of Cary as well, because that's tax revenue that should be generated here. So we offered Patsy $13,000, which is on the high end. I reached out to one of the sign manufacturers that was instrumental on building the sign. And he basically said his estimate was offer her $6,000. And that's coming from somebody who helped build that sign. So we thought that offer of $13,000 was pretty, was respectful. Now, when we did meet with Patsy, she offered us $30,000. That's a little upsetting, but, you know, knowing the current state, and as Mr. Simmons, you know, said to build a new sign, would I be on the high end of $13,000? So at this particular point, you know, with all the cards on the table, and we feel as though to level the playing field would to have the sign come down. Just take it down. And we at Galati's would pay for a brand new sign at our expense, a better sign, one that can benefit everybody in our community. As Patsy was saying, that there's not enough room and so forth, we would make sure that there'd be room. So the way that we look at it is that we've been more than fair. And even Patsy's own attorney said that he agreed with me. And then in the meeting that we had here, Mayor Kalnick and Brian were sort of acting as mediators. Patsy, Patsy basically really wasn't in the agreement. She asked me during the meeting, why would my attorney say that? I don't know. Maybe, I have no idea. But that was the conversation that I had with them. So at this point, discussing everything with my partner, Vince, we'd like to see the board move to a position of taking down the sign. And we feel as though we've exhausted everything. Yes, Patsy we did take a position with Patsy that we only wanted to purchase it based on our previous dealings with her. We did not want to be in business and be in the same position a year from now. We wanted to because this process is just going to keep going on, and we just wanted to stop it from there. And I do believe that pretty much covers our position at this point. I would be open for any questions if the board or Mayor Kalnick would like.
Does anybody have any questions for Pilates?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So where it says Galati's proposal, Mrs. Fritz had said that those boxes are not large enough to see from the road. Is that your proposal if the sign was removed and to have it, you said, built bigger and better or something like that? Or would it be readable for everybody? What is your proposal for your sign?
It would be. I understand that there are certain parameters that we need to, that we need to adhere by if we build a new sign. We understand that. We would propose to the village that if there was some sort of modification, that the sign might to maybe overextend those parameters to fit all of our neighbors within the community, within our Feinberg community. We would definitely be all for that.
Do you have a mock-up of that at all, what it would look like with all the?
We don't at this particular point. We wanted to, and we would even, present one to the board as well. Sure.
Do you know how many businesses are over there now?
I didn't get the exact account. There are some vacancies and so forth. Patsy might have a better
There's
idea.
about 20, because there's some that are sublet. I mean, I could give you a list, provide a list.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
And I didn't make them include Dr. Wyatt, because she's part of that cul-de-sac.
I do have a question on when you talk about the First Amendment to the right of way, and you said option number 2. So as I'm reading this, tell me if I'm reading this properly or not. It says, the top 2 tenant panels on the existing sign shall be made available to the user for former Wool Street. It doesn't say you get the right to buy it. Or am I misreading that?
No,
So I'm confused why you say that.
Well, I'm sorry. The way that we read it as well, too, is that we never had that opportunity. She wanted to come out and say $8,000 for that top portion.
So 3.5 years ago? She
No,
told you
this
$8,000?
was recently. This was actually recently, within the last 6 months that I've dealt with Patsy.
Sure. So what's happened in the last 3.5 years since you owned it?
The initial conversation that Patsy and Vince and his old partner Len, who's no longer with them, they had a conversation, and the conversation just didn't go well based on the financial price of that top portion, and they didn't feel as though they should pay anything for that because basically what was stated there.
Okay, and why? This is just my curiosity because I don't have the answer to this. Sure. Why did it wait 3.5 years before you came here when you're saying you've missed all this revenue in 3.5 years?
Yes, absolutely. I've been Vince's partner for the last year right now.
Okay.
So it's hard for me to go back on that aspect, but it has been an ongoing thorn. Just the communication is there, just bullheadedness, I think. And it wasn't only until that the last year that the Vince and his old partner felt that their hands were basically tied because of the lease, and they were not willing to pay the $8,000 a year that she was looking to sell it to him for, or not sell it, rent it to him for. So that was the main sticking point, was the price. If she would have said, hey, no problem, we'll give it to you free, and no problem, that would have been okay. But she did not want to do that.
So this is maybe a question for Brian, just so that I understand this then. When Mark Green from Buford One, when they owned the sign, they were charging $1,000 to everyone to rent it?
Correct.
Okay, so coming into this, and I'm just curious, Sean, coming into this, and of course you just came into it the most recent year, so I understand that you say you don't have the past history, so I'm just curious from my standpoint, if I was 3.5 years going on, I think I would raise a flag long before now. But did you not think, based upon the fact that Buford One was charging money for that you would not be charged for advertising for that?
The way that Vince and his partner were reading it at the time is that it should have been just once that deal was signed and the building was purchased, that they would just reclaim that. They would just reclaim that, and then any of the, if you look at some of the, and I want to say it's on page, or it's actually, there is a provision as far as subletting, and the subletted space were, in the way that we interpreted and our attorney interpreted it, is the bottom spaces at the $1,000. So there was nothing that specifies in paragraph number 7 where it's underneath sublease.
Okay, I see that. I understand it's a bit ambiguous, and we're trying to all figure this out.
Sure.
And, I'm only speak for myself, but I will just say that in my role here, I don't think that the village board wants to be in a position of picking a winner and a loser. Okay, and that's what position we're in.
Yes.
And it's, I get, maybe no one else feels that way, but I feel like, a little bit like we're put in that situation. I can understand reading that if Buford One owned that and they had the top portion and that was Wool Street, why I would say, yeah, you're thinking you're going to get it for free. But again, I wasn't here. I don't know anyone that was here that negotiated this contract when Patsy was allowed to buy it. And if I own something, I'm feeling like I own it. So
Sure.
I understand why there's a little bit of confusion here. I just wish that the two parties could come together and come up with an agreeable solution that everyone would be happy with and everyone could live with, because when you get a third party involved, and I'm saying us being the third party.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be a win-win.
Absolutely.
Someone's losing here, and I don't like the village being put in that position.
Correct, and I respect that. I respect that. And we didn't want it to come to this either. And we were open to, we just didn't want to be in the same position a year from now, you know, and just going all over this again, you know. So our proposal to rebuild a new sign, have the existing sign, and we rebuild it to whatever the specs, and allow our local community to be on the sign for free. We would even keep all the upkeep, whatever the cost was going to be.
And I understand that. I just, I'm going to be quite frank, where I'm at right now, and I'm not saying, we're just talking about it again.
Sure.
This can change, so I don't want someone to say, oh, you said this at this meeting, and therefore,
Yeah, sure.
I'm open to hearing other points of view, but as I'm reading this, as I'm looking at this, I would not be comfortable with saying we're going to take a sign down and say, Patsy, take a sign down, but hey, we're going to let you now put one up.
Well,
I feel that we're picking
Patsy.
a winner and a loser on that.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And we understand that too, that there's a risk to that there would be no sign that might not go up, you know, but at this point, you know, it's hard data that we're losing revenue, we're losing exposure, so it makes business sense
I
for us.
understand
Yeah.
100% the revenue portion of it, but I also want to keep in mind that someone that has a real estate company is also providing property tax revenue if she's getting people in to buy houses in our community too. So it's sales tax revenue versus property tax revenue, and I don't want to say your portion is more important than this portion.
Sure, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I understand you have to be biased on it, not biased. I get you.
I don't know what everyone else
Do you have
thinks.
any
I would like
questions
to, I'd love to hear what everyone thinks about this, because I just.
So I do have another question. I guess it might be for Mrs. Fritz. So this is a 10-year lease, right? Okay, so are you happy with Gladys' proposal, even if they go ahead and redo the sign and Dolce still gets to sit on there at no charge right below Gladys, and it's still really visible? Are you happy with that? And you don't have to pay for anything either?
No, because first of all, the sign is at maximum size. And if the bottom goes like that with 20 businesses represented, it doesn't give me any representation. It doesn't. I mean, no one will be able to see me on there.
Okay, so what about Dolce's position? Are you happy with where that is on there?
Sure.
Okay. And then with regard to signage, what is it with the village? This is the maximum capacity that it can be at for size?
Okay.
Correct. The maximum size sign that you can have within our sign code is 72 square feet. So this is the maximum size requirements you can have for square footage area. We have no specific requirements as far as the number of tenants you can have on a multi-tenant sign. But generally, with any sign, the more information that's provided in the sign, the less readable it is. So most of the time for shopping centers, you'll see kind of the main tenants will be listed on a sign, but other tenants that are in the center that will kind of piggyback off those main users, you know, Jules' example, or they'll have the main tenant on the sign, and then the secondary tenant panels will be a smaller scale, but not every single business might be advertised on that sign. So if you started to advertise every business in the court, from my opinion, the sign would be unreadable from that standpoint, as the amount of information on the sign that you wouldn't see every business located back there. But from a strict code perspective, the 72 square feet that it is now is the maximum our code permits. If you want to do something larger, a variance would be required for that.
We want, as Brian alluded to, we wouldn't want to have it get too much bigger, though. Obviously, just with the visibility there and people driving past, it kind of be hard to see some of the smaller placards.
I have a question then for Mrs. Fritz. You're proposing this sign in the middle.
Yes, because that was something that Gladys said, Vince said that was fair if they got the 2.5 foot on top, and Dolce would go down to the 18 inches.
And what if they bought the sign and you got free advertisement from the sign?
My problem with, once they buy it, they can put a sign on top that's digital, which then that erases all the ones on the bottom.
Can't we have speculations or stipulations on there?
Yes, that would be good. Yeah, that's true, if that was put on there. But I mean, as a sign owner, I would want that to be open. I mean, I could understand Galati's wanting to put a digital up there. I mean, I came before the village to ask about that too. And not everyone in our cul-de-sac agreed to that, so I backed away. But I would think that Galati's would want a digital.
And what if you share the digital sign also?
Pardon?
I just want to clarify this. With the new right-of-way permit, if the board was going to agree to that, there could be conditions that could be put on that that would dictate the signage here. You do have that option.
But is that for year to year? Or,
Well, that's negotiable.
yeah, see, because that doesn't put me in a very comfortable position, because one year it would be like this, and the next year you can negotiate the digital on top and the others would stay the same. And that's one of my fears.
Correct me if I'm wrong. At what point do we start talking about digital? When we had our conversations, no one had said anything about digital, that the sign was going to be presented as a static sign.
Right.
That's the way that this board, I think, is perceiving this. No way did we talk in this conversation that we're going to a digital sign.
No, but I did bring it up, that.
I understand, but I don't think that this board would ever approve adding a digital sign to this, or the sign already. I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page when it comes to that. So I just want to clarify some things too, so everybody knows. During our meeting, we had talked about just the history of the sign, and we had asked Patsy if she wanted to sell the sign, and Sean had indicated that it was, she said that she would sell the sign for $30,000. Galati's had offered $10,000, correct? And then Patsy countered at $20,000. And then that's when we kind of started talking about different options, changing the signage, changing the size of the sign. It was the Galati's would have the top 2.5 feet, and Dolce Spa would have 18 inches below that. And we were all in agreement for that, were we not? Because that affects Kim's, because she's Dolce, so she was happy with what that was going to be. And then to fit the additional 5 sign panels, those would go from 12 inches to 11 inches, so that Patsy could have a little bit bigger, what was like 16 inches under Dolce. So it would be 2.5 feet, 1.5 feet, 16 inches, a little bit smaller than Dolce, and then the rest would be 11 inches. So they would the remaining 4 would have 11 inches. That's how we were negotiating. We're like, this is all good. This is good. We're moving in a real positive direction. And then when we talked about this, then we let, in the course of that meeting, Brian and I excused ourselves because Patsy had asked if she could negotiate with Galati's at that time. So Brian and I excused ourselves. Then we were called back and said that Patsy had a counteroffer that if they would retain ownership of the sign, Galati's would have it for free. I don't remember talking about a time frame. That's where I have a little bit of, I'm vague. I don't remember anybody saying a year. I just said that there was going to be a free sign, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a pretty good deal. So, and then the conversation kind of went a little sideways there, and we kind of parted ways, and you guys were going to come back, and we gave you like a week or so to come back with some final terminology or just some other negotiations. Is that correct so far? So when we came back, and then in the course of this, Galati's had made another offer on the sign. They upped theirs from, their counter was 20, Galati's offered 13,000. For some reason, I thought it was like 13.5. Sorry, that's where I was at in my mind. So it was 13,000, and so there was some movement there. So from that point on, and this all happened at our meeting when we sat down was on April 5th. So it's just like a month ago. So we've been kind of working through some of these things. And we actually talked about a 50-50 partnership, which none of the parties wanted to be a part of. I get it. We're just trying to look at all the different options. We went through the various fees and the maintenance and electricity and whatever it is, and talking about that the interior of the sign needs to be replaced and changed to LED to be more efficient and environmentally friendly in that. So, we talked about the whole gambit. So now we're talking about the potential of taking the sign down. And I don't think anybody on the board would like to see the sign go down, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we'd like to see the parties work something out. But Brian, can you go back to the streetscape or the street sign with the existing conditions? Now, I had thrown this out at one time before, and I'm going to throw it out again. That what if the sign stays the way it is with Patsy retaining ownership on her sign, and then we allow another permit, to be fair, I'm probably going to get shot for saying this, I'm just talking, and allowed a smaller sign of Galati's like right on the 14 side of where that sign is, just adjacent to that. Do you see what I'm saying? Like if you're looking at the sign to the right, there would be maybe a whatever square foot sign that would be a small monument sign that would show just Galati's as part of that sign. We could have it built so it looks something like that was that sign. I'm just throwing this out there. I'm trying to, get everybody on the same page here. So that could be a potential option.
Are you talking closer to 14, just right in front of it?
Just right in front, just adjacent to it, just like it would be an extension of it.
So on this slide here, you can see where my arrow is. This is the existing sign.
Right.
On this location.
And just go down closer.
Just a small, they were going to build a sign anyway.
Mayor,
So I'm just,
I agree with you. That was actually, I was heading down the path you were with letting them have their own sign. Like we talked in the beginning of this discussion, I don't really think this sign was meant to be something that somebody was profiting off of.
That's correct.
And I'm sort of shocked that Wall Street was allowed to do that. And the fact that the village is not getting paid rent as much as it costs to rent one of these panels sort of shocks me. But I like the idea of allowing them to have their own sign. I wish we could do it so they could honor their request of giving free space to whoever wanted it in Feinberg Drive. That would be optimum, but I don't know if we have the room. And that I was going to ask Brian if we did, and it doesn't sound like we do.
Yeah, I mean, from a usual sign standpoint, we do have requirements for setbacks from your right-of-way. Obviously, this one's in the right-of-way, but there is generally a setback of a certain feet from the property line, which would be along 14 in this location. So that would be likely encroaching into that area. It would be adding another sign, to that area as well, where you have this sign, and then on the opposite corner, the sign for the shopping center and Starbucks there as well. So you have to take into account how much signage is in the area, and then what, is kind of the board's comfort level for signage in that regards.
Would it create any visibility issues from 14? I mean, there's a reason you have a setback, right, from a safety standpoint?
Yeah, there's a side triangle you would have as far as, stopping distance for vehicles that are coming out of Feinberg Drive. If the sign is in that area, there's a restriction as far as, allowing vehicles to see oncoming traffic, from down 14 on the east.
If it was lower, because it's just one sign, would that address that issue then?
If you're sitting in a passenger vehicle, you're generally about 3.5 feet
Right.
above the ground. So anything, that's in that said distance would be blocking visibility.
We would want to look at that, obviously, and see how that would impact.
I'm just saying, it seems to me like the parties are truly at an impasse. That you just, no matter what, for whatever reason, that trust bond is broken between each other, and I don't know that we can sit there and fix it. In fact, I don't feel that we can. So how do we accommodate everybody? Because these are valid, Galati's needs to have visibility. They need to have some visibility.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Can you come up to the,
For me, just sitting here, my honest approach is like, I don't understand if we're offering free for a time frame that could be put up how quickly. And for a short time, it's eliminated without any argument, you know what I mean? And clearly, my mother doesn't want to sell the sign. I don't feel like she should be forced to sell the sign. That doesn't seem fair, right, in any way, shape, or form. And if you really are worried about your 5 people, tomorrow or in the next month, you can have your sign for whatever, and possibly have 10, 15, 20, people for free for that year. I don't understand where there's a huge discussion if they get it for free.
I think that I could be wrong, but I think that the problem would be then what happens in a year? Are we sitting here doing the same thing in a
Or
year?
even if it was 3 years, or, I was speaking with my mother, what is 3 years for free, you know what I mean? I just think if it's a visibility issue, it seems off to me that something's offered free, and you're arguing with that, and you want to own the sign, what is your real motive? Because that makes it feel like this is free visibility if you get it on a top panel now. Do you know what I'm saying? That's my gut feeling, so. Versus if it was a 3-year lease, they get 3 years free. I don't quite understand. For me, that's fine.
Is anybody on this board friends with either party? Or have a relationship with either party? No?
I certainly know all the parties.
I used Patsy Fritz for tax appeal years ago.
I've used
I eat at
Patsy
Pilates. I mean, if that's the extent of
Yeah.
relations, we're not
I'm just
buddies.
curious, like if you're like favored of one or the other, because I don't know either of them, and I was just curious on who on the board has a relationship with who, so.
No relationship.
But that's just my thought process on the quickest way to resolve this issue where it seems fair to me across the board, but that's my thoughts.
One point I was going to interject is for trustee McAlpine's comment was looking at the amendment that was executed for this lease basically established that the top panel would be reserved for the former restaurant. It didn't set or go as far as to set what terms that could be made available to. So although it is made available to them, it was at a price that Pilates wasn't willing to pay. There are ways potentially within a new agreement that we can establish what a condition might be for what a maximum rent would be for any tenant panel on that sign. That was something that the board wanted to consider, to issue a new permit for it and can establish new terms as far as what the maximum percentage would be for a tenant panel on that sign.
Just one more thing too, I had trying to do some research and history on this since I was not involved in the original negotiation, although I was part of the extension. I had a meeting with Mayor Lamal about it, and his take on the original sign was that it was not going to be a profit center. It was the reason that the board approved that was because Wolf Street made a case to the village that they needed Route 14 visibility to be viable in the community. And that was the intention of them doing this. He was not aware, and he was not aware of anybody paying rent. That was never part of their initial conversations with that. So just to throw that out.
I see one thing on the profit center thing. When the bottom panels changed, it's like $600 to put a new panel in there and money put in different lighting and everything. So if someone stays on there 1 year, it's really $400. And if it was down to, because I buy the panels, I have them installed.
Right. But don't you charge them?
Profit center.
Yeah.
I mean, I make more money on one transaction than I do on that sign.
We talked about that in our negotiations at my office, and that was discussed that whoever has the sign there, say Johnson Eye Care changes this, they're responsible for the cost of that new panel. That was my understanding. So they're in addition to their rent, if they're going to have the sign put up, then the sign cost is in addition. Is that correct? Okay, just want to make sure.
But I haven't so far, I put the sign panel in
Okay.
at my cost.
Okay.
I mean, Mark Pell's just went on it and I paid for the panel. So, and just one other point, if there's $250 of revenue lost a day, I mean, to pay a couple of thousand for the top of that sign, if he's losing 90,000, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that was a low number, right, 90,000?
We estimated there'd be close to 200,000 now.
So at 200,000, $5,000 and he was paying a couple thousand a year, not a month, a year for this house. That makes no sense.
Sure, please come up to it. I should really be having, if you're going to talk, you need to come to the microphone, please.
Again, we were never opposed to taking the free spot on the sign. We're never opposed. We always kept that. It wasn't until Patsy said, as part of one of her ideas that she sent me via text message, was that she was now going to charge us $1,000 for the top billing of the sign. So the free thing, the free deal went out. And then she wanted to shrink our neighbors an inch, which again, we want to reiterate, we don't believe that sign should be for profit. It was designed, in our mind, is to promote the local businesses on a heavily traveled area on Route 14. And I understand Patsy wants to make money off of it, but I think she's missing the point with that. You know, we're all about the community here. And that was the issue. We didn't agree with now having to pay $1,000 for what was going to be free. And so her executive realty can go larger at the expense of everybody else. We just don't agree with it. I'm sorry.
Vince, would you just state your name, please?
Vince Galati. That's been the problem between me and Patsy. I mean, the story changes constantly, if that was your question. Our first meeting signed $7,000 a month or a year. Second meeting, oh, well, you know, it changes constantly. It's been 3.5 years. We've been trying to obtain the sign. I think it's time. Whatever happens, I think it's time. We need visibility. You know, we've proven ourselves down there. We want a sign. You know, it's simple. You know, that sign was built for, not Galati's, but for Wolf Street. So, you know, now Galati's is down there. It could have been someone else. They need a sign.
Right.
Period. You know, and she makes us sound bad, like, oh, well, you know, if you're losing out on 90 grand, and that's not the point, Patsy. I want a sign. That's what was in your lease. The lease is over.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions or? What? Any questions here?
Can I get clarification?
David Miller, like Julian and Carrie. I was at the meetings when they put a sign up for Wool Street. Who paid for the sign? Didn't Wool Street pay for that sign?
Yes.
And the village owns the property, correct? They leased the...
Well, we maintain, it's a public right of way.
Okay, so the village gets revenue, gets a rent for that space?
Yes.
I believe we get $600 or $650 a year for rent.
And then Wool Street built the sign? Jake, you were here when they did that.
That was before my time, but Wolf Street did build a sign.
Okay. So that building where Gladys is now, it was set up for them. And then they let everybody else put on there. Do you know they paid rent or just maintenance or what it was to it? It seems like it went way awry making a moneymaker out of it, not the purpose of just getting business. Did you remember anything part of that, Jake?
I believe they paid rent. Brian, I don't know if you know offhand or not.
You know?
Yeah, I don't know for certain though.
Yeah.
I thought it said in our packet, though, one was $1,000 per panel.
Right.
That Wolf Street then started charging.
Yes. Mark Green offered the lower one for
But then Mayor
panels for
Lamal didn't
1,000.
realize that they were making money off of it.
Right. So, but you guys have control with leasing with the lease, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys made it that they couldn't raise their rent and everybody felt secure, you think everything would be resolved? You know, there's a trust issue thing going on here, but if you guys can make sure that it is the way it is, I don't see why it can't stay the way it was and get Wall Street or get Gladys back on top and get their business back the way it was set up to be done. What you guys agreed? the village did.
Right.
Since very day one, just a thought. Thanks.
Well, and I think that's kind of what we're trying to negotiate here, but it sounds like the parties don't want to.
But
I
it
mean,
sounds like
you
the
have to have a
village has
willing,
the
but you have to have a
power.
willing seller, right? If you own, it's just like any piece of property or anything. If someone owns it, someone's got to be willing to sell it.
She owns the sign itself?
No, she owns the sign. So I mean, our point is, yeah, we could as a village come and take it down.
Right.
Okay, but as it stands right now, we have someone that bought that sign. Yeah, she bought it from them, at least what it says.
From Martine? What was, can I ask what you paid for it?
I honestly don't remember if it's either 12/6 or 14/6.
Okay.
I was looking at the paperwork and he told me he paid 32 for it.
Yeah.
32,000. So I don't know where 6,000 came from. Because I don't see how that sign could have been built for 6,000.
No.
I think that they indicated that's the value of the sign now.
Right, depreciated value maybe.
Well, I'm going to throw, discussing
Thanks, Dave.
with village attorney here about trying to come to some sort of an agreement so everybody kind of walks away feeling a little bit comfortable. I'm going to throw something out here that would afford us the opportunity to move forward in a positive direction. Everybody will benefit from this. That if Patsy would agree to allow Galati's to have the sign there for 2 years for free, you retain ownership of the sign. We go back to the original agreement that we had said, that the 2.5, the 18 inches, where everybody benefits. Would the board be willing to do something like that so we can come up with and see if we can work together over the next 2 years to come up with a viable solution for everybody? I'd like to explore the opportunity of extending that sign. Talk to Eric. He looks like he's shrugging his shoulders over there about it. But, talk about some viable opportunities here, and we can build this into the agreement so that we can move forward. Galati's can have their sign, Kim can have her sign, Patsy can have her. Your new sign is Realty Exclusives now, or All Exclusive Realty and Dolce. They're both longstanding businesses in Cary. We appreciate your business. We want to make sure that everybody can benefit from this. And the only way that I see doing this is if we could come up with something that originally my interpretation of that meeting, when you had said that Galati's could have it for free, that was in perpetuity. That was not given a time frame at that meeting. So I'm just asking for some clarification on that. So at our attorney's advice that perhaps if we can come together with a meeting that would give visibility to Galati's, you get your sign and sign a 2-year permit, not a lease, to move forward on this. Would both parties be?
But, well, would that include then continuing to be able to charge for the panels? Because it sounds like Galati's is willing to go back to what the original agreement was meant to be, was that Galati's would get the top sign, they paid for it, and then the other panels would be afforded to those people down there that would want to be on there for free. If Patsy would be willing to accept their offer of, 12/6 or 14/6, whatever it was, you guys were coming in at 13, sell the sign to Galati's, and we kind of solved the problem there, and we're back to where we were with the original agreement, Galati's, and then free advertising for the people down in the cul-de-sac.
But it looks, it wasn't everyone paying $1,000?
Pardon?
But wasn't everyone in the cul-de-sac paying $1,000 when it was the original agreement?
Well, it wasn't supposed to be that way.
Okay, but I'm just saying, is anyone complaining? Does Johnson Eye Care, Schmidt, does anyone have an issue with paying $1,000 a year? I mean, I look at this, about $85 a month for advertising on Route 14. That's pretty darn cheap if I'm a business.
10 years, everyone's paid. I paid.
I know.
Straight, everyone paid that.
I don't want to be in the business of telling someone what they can charge and what they can't charge. That's just me. I don't want to be held in business what they can and can't charge.
I agree with Jeff. I don't think this should really be a moneymaker. I like what you had said, so.
I guess I look at it too, if I had the option to either pay $85 a month or get it for free on that business, I'd take the free option.
Even if it's only 1/8 of the size, you pay $1,000 for?
They weren't, I don't think that they were talking about that. They're doing the sign on mine. It's Brian, if you have that
Brian, could
slide
you
up
go
with the
back to
three
the one?
slides, it's Galati's on top, Dolce below it, and then you're right below it. So Fritz's proposal with Galati's owning it and then charging no rent, and then you said, Jeff, that they would just buy it from Patsy. Is that what you had said?
Because I'm at the point where either the village takes it back or we tear it down and no new sign gets built.
Scott, Attorney Euler, what is our authority as far as renewing the lease or permit, as far as dictating the amount of the rent for each space or what can be put in each space?
At this point, you have total authority to do whatever you want. It's in the right of way. There's no continuing legal right to keep it in the right of way. So
theoretically,
blank slate right now.
The village could say, we want Galati's, we want it to be just like this, and we want it to be free.
Yes.
All right.
Any other thoughts on this? We need to give some direction to the two business owners here. Kim, you would like to see Galati's purchase the sign?
Yeah, I like that the businesses get free advertising. I like that.
Yeah, what I had said, that Galati's go ahead and get to purchase the sign, and then they're going to do free advertising, just what Jeff had said too. Agree with Kim and Jeff.
I like the same thing, but is there going to be a problem with the price of the sign that Galati's, what Galati's pays for it?
Well,
Just briefly, it sounds like the board has a lot of, that you're coming to a consensus about a number of items that you'd like to see as part of the arrangement going forward. So if you want time to put all those things into one place for you to examine, those things that are most critical about this, if the proposal is going forward that there be some reasonable appraised value of this sign, this structure, that Galati's be offered the opportunity to buy it, so both sides benefit from the transaction going forward. And that include these conditions that the sign panels be free for the Feinberg Court, for those who are going to be using it. You can do that if you want to put that package together more carefully. And in the meantime, the only reason I suggested to the mayor, you might want to consider a license for 6 months, for a year, for 4 months, while you do that in order to put in place a permanent solution. If we're looking at an appraised value, one option would be to tell Galati's, the village will select an appraiser. That appraised number will be the price of the sign, and Galati's is given the opportunity to purchase the sign. Or you can assign a number if the village feels comfortable doing that. But if you want some professional feedback on what it should cost, you get an appraisal. So if you want time to put that together in one proposal, or maybe two options for the board to consider, you can extend this arrangement temporarily, and if you want to put Galati's at the top during this temporary period, you can do that. And otherwise, keep everything else in place. That's just an option.
And then just, the bottom ones, if anybody ever moves or something like that, and or somebody goes in and out, then the business that is going to be there, needs to be maintained, would pay for that to Galati's, and just, like, I think Patsy said that it was $450 to go ahead and put like a new slot in, or?
It was like 600.
Okay, so then that business, it wouldn't be Galati's responsibility, it would be Carey Family Dental or Johnson Eye Care or whoever else would be.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But are you saying to move it to like the 20 businesses? Or
No,
have, like,
your proposal.
Your proposal.
Your proposal, the one in the middle.
Okay.
So again, I think there are a number of ideas that everybody is coming to agreement about. If you want to put those all in one proposal and see it again and think it over, you could do that. And in the meantime, you can either just leave it the way it is, or you can extend on a legal basis a license for a period of time. And as part of that license, if you wanted to provide that there's a different sign on top, you can do that.
Would the board want to have us look into an appraisal here of the sign?
Who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, I was wondering that, and then are they already comfortable with the price?
I don't think that the final price has been, it's comfortable, my impression.
Would Galati's be interested if it was the middle proposal with the panels being that way?
And we would take ownership of it.
Mhm.
We would be open to that for sure. We'd be open to that.
We're gonna buy the sign, we should have the right to the top of the sign.
Right.
Oh, yeah, you
Right, I
have
think
the
we're
top.
talking
Yeah.
about-
would be
yeah,
the
we
middle
want
one.
it
Kind of
in
go
the
back to
middle.
like what the
The
original
middle one.
agreement was.
You'd have the name on top.
So it would actually go to the Fritz proposal.
Yeah, to the existing.
Do you think it's
See on the middle. of
This
the
one, yeah.
Middle proposal,
Mhm.
it's 2.5 for Pilates, 1.5 for Dolce. And
Yeah.
on the other
It's got
one,
mixed up.
because there's that panel there, Dolce actually fills 3 foot. We'd have to move that one bar up just a little bit to make those fit. You see what I'm saying? Because Vince, you had said 2.5 would be enough. And so that's what's at the top. On the Fritz proposal, it's 2.5 foot opposed to 3 foot.
2.5.
That allows for Dolce to have 1.5 foot.
The village board, but as we said, we'd have the ability to dictate the
Right,
signage,
right.
what the dimensions are,
Right.
so.
Well, I would think, I mean, I like, Scott, I like your proposal with doing something temporarily, because I think everyone here is at least in agreement that Pilates needs to have that exposure. So I think everyone's in agreement from everything I'm hearing from all parties. So while we work out the details or whatever.
What is your
Yeah.
opinion on them having it or Patsy keeping it and charging rent?
You know what, I'm going to defer to who owns the, like I would to anyone, I'm going to defer, number one, is she willing to sell?
What is your opinion on it, though?
Well, if someone's asking, would it be nice for people to get free advertising? Of course, that's a no-brainer. Of course, that's nice. Do I think it's unreasonable to pay roughly $85 a month for visibility on 14 as a business? And I have a business. If I had my business on 14, I wouldn't think that that's unreasonable to pay that money. So I don't think it's an unreasonable amount that someone's charging for something like that. If the parties can come to a solution and it
But
can
they
be free
haven't
for
been
everyone, I
able
think
to.
that's optimal. That's great.
Right, I do think from this discussion, the board is probably going to have to propose a solution. I don't think the parties are going to negotiate a solution at this
Right.
moment. It doesn't appear they are.
Right.
So,
Kim, could you come back up? Kim, could you come up to the microphone, please?
Correct me if you're wrong, when you actually were proposing, you were proposing doing a 2-year lease with you guys on the top free, Patsy keeping ownership, and everybody that is currently, I could have them all, or you could probably have them all come in and say they're perfectly fine with paying that $1,000 a year. So to me, that is the easiest resolution. Was that not what you were saying?
It was, but it seems like the board has other options for that. They have other
Which I understand,
desires.
but do we have the opportunity to ask them if they're open to that?
We had talked about it not being a moneymaker, that the original
But
agreement.
it's not really a moneymaker, to be totally honest. It's
Okay, if
not
it's
like,
not, then what's the big deal about letting Pilates have it and then charging no rent to anybody?
because she purchased that sign, she's paid insurance on that sign, she did
Yeah,
the
but
lease
if
for
they're going
that
to buy it for
sign.
you at a fair price, buy it from you for a fair price.
I feel that really the reason is she wants to have control to be able to keep our businesses advertised. As you know, if they buy the sign, they can come back and reapproach you guys to redo the sign whichever way they wish. That's the truth, and everybody knows it. That's the reason for keeping ownership.
Well, I don't think that in the discussions that I've had with you guys, with both of you guys together in the room, I didn't get that indication that they were going to try to slight you in any way, shape, or form with regards to presence on the sign. Actually, they were quite clear about what they were going to give you. They're going to give you better visibility, or they're going to change your sign. They were agreeing to change your size of the sign. And we could build into whatever agreement we have that this is how it's got to be. And it's going to be Pilates, Dolce, All Exclusive Realty, and then the bottom 4 are interchangeable for whoever comes and goes or whatever. I mean, that's
Okay.
something that we can
I'm just
build into.
giving my strong opinion.
I honestly don't think that anybody here is trying to.
I'm not either. I'm trying to say for 2 years free, to me, nothing should change. I don't think we should be told whether or not we can charge $1,000 for like you said, $85 a month. I think that's crazy being told what you can and cannot do with something you purchase fair and square, and it's been that way for how many years?
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it goes up every year.
But the caveat to that is it's on our public right of way, and the
Okay.
original lease was for 10 years.
Okay.
So we are exceeding anything about it. There's no bulldozers waiting in the wings here. We're trying to come together. That's something that's going to be favorable
Right.
for everybody.
No, I agree.
And-
I just
and
thought that's what you were saying, and
Well, I'd thrown that out there. I talked to Scott. He had actually said 6 months or a year. I'm like, let's go to spoke, but I'm just trying to get everybody together so that we could, walk away and everybody feels, and not that we're, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So, but then the other board members here have different ideas. And, it sounds like a majority of the board would like to see Galati's take ownership of the sign and have all the businesses that are down in Feinberg get free rent. And I can see that. But, you guys have to come to an agreement on the sign price, but that's something that we can help with an appraisal and, just to get a fair market value for for it.
I work with appraisers all the time. Every appraiser is different, not as fine.
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
First, I work with appraisers every day in real estate, and there's not a defined value. So that's fine. And if I had been told, that it's likely that I would have to sell, I would have done that before. They offered 20 4 months ago, and then they went down to 10 and then up to 13. So I know that but when you say all the businesses will be represented,
No, they never said that. They said your proposal, Fritz's proposal.
So Fritz's proposal is fine for me.
Okay.
And I would like to just say, if you'll pay $15,000, we're done. I'm done. I don't want to not sleep anymore. And I'm done with this. And you can do whatever you want. So.
Vince, Sean, is that a number that you could live with? Do you guys want to go? You can go into that room if you'd like to.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. There's a room right there too. that you can
Sean,
open
straight
and close
ahead and
the
go
door.
in that. So I'm assuming, just so for the record, I'm assuming if they can come to terms on this, our new agreement will incorporate the sales price. Galati's takes ownership. We can dictate that the Galati's, Dolce, everything as it is, at least for maybe the top three have to remain consistent, as long as they're all viable and they want to stay there. I mean, if you choose to leave, you choose to leave. But just so
How long is this good for? Is this good for
Well,
a certain period of time? For
we could, that's completely up to us. The last term was 10 years. I think that was too long, to be quite honest. Maybe a year is too short. If we can come together with an agreement, maybe a 3-year agreement or something like that, that's renewable.
Term is up to the board, however you want to structure it.
Whatever we decide.
We do not have a problem on paying the $15,000 for the sign, as long as it's the existing condition. We just don't want to shortchange any of our neighbors on the Fritz proposal. So in the current condition that it is right now, we would pay the $15,000 in the existing condition.
So Galati's is 2.5, Dolce is 1.5, and then all the rest are 1 foot with 12 inches. Is that what it is right now?
No, Dolce's got the top spot and everything is 1.5, or 1, whatever it is.
Yeah, so
the existing, I'll go to okay, I'm sorry, I was.
On the left. So those, Brian, do you know what those dimensions are for the current Dolce sign then?
The Dolce sign right now, I believe, is 3 feet in height. The portion of the sign here, which is a changeable copy, is another foot, and every tenant panel below that is a foot in height.
And if I remember correctly from the description, these two signs are boxes that sit on top of each other. So you can't.
So you're going to have to reconfigure a little bit no matter what, right?
Meaning the top two panels?
Right, the top two panels, you have to reconfigure those a little bit from where they are right now.
Well, they're saying they'd
Understanding
like
what
to
Galati's is saying
keep
is
it.
they would keep this sign as is with the Dolce Spa portion being for Galati's. This space here would be for the spa and then the individual tenant panels below. So they would not change the structure of the sign, but would take the restaurant and put that in the top panel.
Correct.
What is the board's thought on that?
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
That's good.
You okay with that?
I'm not good. I mean, you already told Vince, you said at that meeting you were good and you thought it was fair.
Patsy, could you come up to the microphone? Vince, why don't you come up here too?
At the meeting with the mayor, that was the one thing you said in agreement. I think that's fair. 2.5 feet for you and 18 inches for Kim.
That was at the time that you were going to rent it back to me, and we were going to decide, you said you were going to give us a free year or
Yeah.
whatever. You didn't say a year free.
Yeah.
And I said, that's fine, you can shrink the sign, do whatever you want. But if we're going to pay for a sign and then we're going to have to reconfigure the whole thing, I don't think that's fair. If we're going to
But we
pay
would
for a sign,
reconfigure.
we should leave it the way it is.
Which actually then gives Dolce no extra. And I bought a sign 5 years ago thinking that I would be able to do that. And so it
That's,
doesn't
you've
make
made your
sense.
money on a sign. You
I
said
don't
to
want to
me.
make money on the sign. I
At the
want Dolce
village,
to stay
at the
a little
village
larger.
meeting, you said that no one paid you for the sign. You lied to us. You continue to lie.
I did not ever say that, sorry.
Please.
It's in the notes. But I bought a sign 5 years ago and was with the thought of my business and Dolce having good exposure. And 18 inches for Dolce, you'd agreed to that earlier.
I
And I
did.
don't know
I
what-
did agree to it when I was getting the top sign to rent from you.
Yeah, and so if you agreed to it then, why wouldn't you agree to it now?
Because it's long-term. If I'm buying a sign, I'm giving it to you for free that
Yes.
you haven't done for all
How
the
many
rest. So I am being respectful. We're putting you on a sign for the next 10, 20, 15 years for free.
Well, we won't be there that long, so I would
Well-
still like the 18 inches for him.
It seems like the terms have changed here. Their last offer was $13,000 to you. You made a counter offer of $15,000. They've agreed to the $15,000. We didn't discuss the signs. They obviously have a different idea now that they're paying more for the sign. That this is the interpretation that I'm getting here. So, Kim, would you be happy with, satisfied, you're still on there for free, and we move on? Is that something that you would be? I don't mean to put you in an awkward situation. I just,
I mean, it's not what we came in for, but it's getting crazy, so. It's first sale of the sign, I don't feel like I can answer that, to be totally honest, but.
She said earlier that if she had to shrink down to just one little line, she could sell, and I think that's what'll happen. So if that's what it is, that's fine.
You would sell what, your business?
So I might move, but there's really, you know, it's hard.
Because of the sign, you might actually move?
It's just, I feel like I could get better visibility, you change the sign, and then you go down, you know what I mean? It's the same, I mean, they have lights on top of their building, you know, I would ask if I could put up Christmas lights 10 years ago, and I would know. They have lights all across the whole entire building.
Well, you guys are only one of two Aveda salons in Cary, which I think is great. And I think if somebody wants to go to an Aveda salon, which I think is an awesome place, you would just Google Aveda salon in Cary and you can pick from one of the two and then just map it to get to your place. So I just, yeah.
I mean, it's her decision, I'm done arguing, this is ridiculous, so.
I'm fine with that, and I won't ever support, I'm not staying in this town with that, but that's fine, I accept that. I
okay.
accept it.
All right, we'll drop the papers. We'll drop the new agreement for the permit, and we'll move forward. Thank you.
And I would like permission, like, that one line is if it's less than a foot, to have her switch out, but I don't think that'll happen either.
Wait, what did, I don't understand what you're saying.
What?
How Dolce, you know, it doesn't fit. There's, I mean, if that's less than a foot there, and I didn't measure that part.
On the existing condition you're talking.
Right. If
Why don't you
that's
come up to
less
the,
than a foot,
Patsy,
I
come up
would
to the
like
microphone.
permission.
Just come up to the microphone so everyone can hear you.
If it's less, if where the blank space is, if that's less than a foot, I'd like to have permission to move Kim down to where all exclusive is, because her sign won't fit. On a 1 foot, it just won't fit. So
So you're
it-
saying remove your name from there and have Dolce be both of yours?
Yeah, you
Switch
flip
them.
our two, if that actually is smaller than where all exclusive is. And of course, they don't want you to have the 16 inches, so that's out of the picture. It's just, her sign won't fit on a foot. I mean, her logo just won't fit on a foot. It won't. So if I could give up some of mine and have her have more space, that'd be fine. But I don't think that'll happen either, so I'm fine.
For me, I kind of like what, going back to what Ellen says, this just kind of stinks. Like, you know, I would love it to be a win-win, and I don't want anybody leaving here. I think you guys are both great. Everybody here is great, and I would love to keep, you know, everybody here in Cary. I would hate for you guys to want to move because of a sign. At this point, just you guys are leading this because this is exhausting.
All right, we'll bring back a concrete proposal for the board to take a look at and think about a little bit further.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to a discussion on the solicitor's ordinance. Hello, Chief.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
I think she's gonna. Told me.
I started. Sorry about that. Good. It's even better yet because I'd like to have some visual stimulation here. Again, we come here to discuss the solicitor ordinance and some of the issues that we try to resolve from our previous discussion related to this topic. And I'm looking for, you've been presented with a proposed ordinance in your packet. And then we can maybe further discuss this, and then I can get some direction so we can resolve this issue totally. I just want to remind everyone, again, that our stated policy on soliciting is that it's really up to the occupant to determine whether or not they're going to invite the person or the solicitor into their residence. That's, you know, that's been a policy since the code was initiated, and it would appear somewhere in the area of 1980 or maybe 2009 it was amended. This is what someone would have to present. Can you see it?
No, we can, but there's a green box in the middle of our screen, so.
It says
Can you-
input signal out of range.
Can you minimize it?
Because you didn't have anything on that side, so I figured something was up.
We're experiencing some technical difficulties today.
Yeah.
Please stand.
I'm calling them gremlins, that's what I'm calling them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just keep it at that.
All right. I got it, thanks. So this is the sign that the police department provides that someone can display to indicate that they would not want to have a solicitor approach them at their residence. So a couple things that we did do in this new iteration of the ordinances that we've included charitable organizations, and charitable organizations, according to this newly revised ordinance, would include those organizations that are contained, embedded through the Illinois Attorney General's Charitable Trust database. So I'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of how we can look at that so that we're talking about background checks for commercial solicitors, and the Illinois Attorney General's office has to do investigations, and then they accept reports from charitable organizations. And it really is a little bit difficult to achieve that, but once you've achieved it, you have to maintain that. I have personal experience with the AMVETS, and it took about 3 years to get that status. Commercial soliciting is, we kind of define commercial soliciting is an entity or business that profits from whatever sales, the sale of goods or services that they're offering. And then a group permit, where instead of a commercial solicitor who would get something that looks like what I envision the permit to be a little bit later in this presentation, group permits would be issued to those charitable organizations that are operating generally 18 years or under, is the way it's termed, that, or people that are soliciting on the roadway, so that you don't have to give a badge or a permit, individual permit to those individuals, because they would be, operating under that charitable organization umbrella. And this is what I was talking about in regards to the Illinois Attorney General's Charitable Trust database. If you go to their website, the red circle indicates a portion that's called Building Better Charities. And if you go there, on the right side, you can see I just put in Carrie to just search on the available charitable organizations. You can see that you have District 26 in there, a swim team, Cary Basketball Association. So there are a number of Cary organizations that would qualify under that 18 under charitable solicitations for youth purposes that would definitely qualify under that. And it wouldn't take too much to determine if those organizations were in good standing with the Illinois Attorney General's office. Now, under the Charitable Trust Act, the Attorney General does all the investigation, and they have the ability to do that, so that whatever's on the website is current and they've vetted it. So we're going to be looking at background investigations for commercial solicitors, and we're going to be relying on the Illinois Attorney General's Charitable Trust database for those charitable organizations. This is what I was talking about in regards to the types of permits. So permits or badges for commercial soliciting, or if someone was soliciting not on behalf of a charitable organization, but it was someone that was under 18 years of age, they'd have an adult sponsor. That person would have to be vetted, and the individual that was under 18 years of age could solicit without having that permit or having their picture taken and a permit produced. The group permits are generally for those that are not approaching residences, like those organizations that solicit on the roadway, or perhaps at areas like the individual businesses that allow them to solicit at their entrances. And then Mr. Euler, our attorney, sent me an exemption under the Illinois Municipal Code that requires that certain charitable organizations, so long as they meet some specific conditions within the municipal code, that they cannot be refused a solicitation permit. And those are generally public safety related, and it is for those public safety entities that are soliciting within their jurisdiction.
I have a question about this.
Okay.
So where it says group permits, youth organizations under 18 years of age and recognized by the Illinois Attorney General as a charitable organization.
Yes.
So let's say Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts,
They're all in there.
they are.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They're in there, and you, not maybe the specific PAC, but the parent organization is in the Illinois Attorney General's database, and what it will also give you is their net worth that they're reporting.
Okay, and then backing up to slide 5, where you had on the right-hand side examples of like swim team and things like that, those are all charitable organizations as well?
Correct. Those are the organizations that have fulfilled the requirements of the Illinois Attorney General's office, and they are displayed on their charitable trust database.
Okay.
And there is a number of them. I just took a quick screenshot of the first 5 that popped up.
What about Cary Youth Baseball?
It's in there, but it's not called Cary Youth Baseball.
Okay,
It's something, Cary Federation, Baseball Federation.
okay, great. Thank you for looking that up.
No problem. So people that are involved in commercial soliciting, they would have to undergo a fingerprint-based background check. That interval would be annual. We spoke about when does a background check become stale. So a year seemed reasonable, so that the fees that we would charge would recapture that applicant fee that the village would have to pay for in our live scan submission. So if they were doing the full fingerprint background, it would be 40, but because we only issue, our current code, we only issue permits at 30-day intervals. Every time they would come in to apply for a new solicitor application, it would only be $15 because we're capturing costs related to time and material to produce that additional badge or permit that we would issue to them individually.
Does this apply to nonprofits as well, or no? So I know Jeff had the question, he didn't want to charge, money. I don't know specifically what it was for, but I do remember you saying that. And so are we charging for charitable organizations?
No.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
no. Charitable organizations would be without charge. It's only for the commercial solicitors that there would be a charge. And I would contend that it's pretty nominal fee as it relates to the charge for those permits. Huh. It's been a challenge today.
Don't do that.
So this is something that I envision. Don't hold me to this. This is something that I produced so that it has all the elements that are found in the amended, or actually the original ordinance that was submitted, so that the solicitor that's a commercial solicitor would have to display this conspicuously, and it would have to be offered to the resident if they wanted to take a look at it, and it would include, of course, our logo, what it is, the person that was soliciting, who they're soliciting for, and when it expires. Any issues in regards to that?
So let me just ask a quick question, because you talked about there were some solicitors that do it every single month. If they knew that up front, could they come and say, I'm going to pay you $205, which is $40 for the initial, and $165, $15 a month times 11 other months? And would we have it expire in 1 year, or would we have them come in and redo this every month?
The current practice is that they have to come in and do it every month now. And because they have to submit an application every time they come in, they have to attest that they haven't been charged with or convicted of a felony within the last 5 years. That's our criteria that would disqualify them. So they would still have to fill out that application and sign that there was no
change.
Yeah, and then, we would do the background check every year.
Right.
And it would be,
background check, but you redo this every month.
Exactly.
Okay.
What would be an example of a commercial solicitor, a landscaper?
Yes, yeah. Anyone that's doing this for profit for a commercial entity, we have any number of electrical suppliers. We have certain landscaping entities.
Yeah, contractors.
Window salespeople.
You said, however, though, if it's not face-to-face, if they don't need a solicitor's permit, let's say they're hanging something on the door or throwing
We're going to get to that.
All right.
So, but yes, there's a portion of this that would be related to the printed material, and we had some issues related to how people, or how those entities were depositing those notices on individual residents' driveways, and I think I've addressed that, and it's more as it was presented originally, so I can get to that too. Any questions in regards to the permit? Yes, sir.
Well, so you're saying this this is a year-round solicitor that's doing it 12 months, but they need to come in every month
Yes, they do.
and renew?
Current
What
practice.
is the $40 and the $15 for?
The $40 is so that the village recaptures, and I believe it's $27 for a fee applicant submission for us to get a report back on them in regards to convictions. Because we do that for liquor license holders, and we have a live scan piece of equipment that the state, we have a balance that we draw down on. So that's what this is we would submit those fingerprints, they would come back and give us a report, not a criminal justice report, because a criminal justice report would give me arrests and convictions. This is only convictions.
And you would be doing that every month?
No, every year.
Once a year.
So would they need to pay it every month then? Or
No.
is it just
$40 and $15 for the year.
Right, it's an annual, for the background check, it would only be good for a year. So they would only pay $40 once every 12 months.
Okay.
And then when they come in, till they hit that other,
to go undergo another background.
is covering?
our cost to produce the solicitor permit and time that we devote to reviewing the applications. So we're.
Oh, and they would need a new one because it would expire. every
Exactly,
month.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So what that does is for the resident to let them know that they're valid.
Okay.
So that's why I came up with the 205 is what would cost them in a year.
So we just spoke about soliciting by means of printed material, and we identify some parameters in this current amended submission, and that would be that they could be no bigger than 8.5 by 11. They have to be securely affixed to either the residence or the entryway, but they can't alert the residents that they're there. It has to include the name of the party and a contact number, so that if there's an issue with them, we can contact them. And then for this particular means of solicitation, there would be no permit required. I didn't know if you had anything to say. So again, we're looking at that four-prong test as it relates to solicitation and the First Amendment activities. So it's content neutral, and I think we've achieved that. We're treating like classes of solicitors the same. It serves a legitimate governmental objective. We want to make sure that the individuals that are soliciting in our community aren't a danger to the community or are legitimate. It leaves ample alternatives for channels of communication. I don't know that we address that, but we certainly leave it open to their ability to obtain the solicitor permit, and it's narrowly tailored. We didn't change anything in regards to hours. We're not saying you can't do it. It's just a matter of the criteria or the category of solicitor that we treat the same. Mr. Euler, did you have anything else to add?
I did not.
Thank you, sir. So I would be happy to answer any questions that you'd have.
The hours, what's the earliest that we can cut them off at?
And I didn't leave, I left that alone. I didn't change it.
In the ordinance itself, it's 8.
Right.
Say that again?
In the ordinance itself, it's 8. It was 8, and it's still 8 unless
but
we were changing it.
What can we go ahead and curb it back to? Can we curb it back any earlier than 8?
It's opening us up to a legal
Right.
challenge potentially.
It becomes more vulnerable the earlier you pull that in.
Do you know why another law firm that represented the village earlier said that we could curb it? I think it was back to like 6 p.m.
No, I don't.
You don't?
No, I'm not sure. I think that would be right on the prohibited line that the courts have identified as a time when you would most be likely to find somebody at home if you were engaging in door-to-door solicitation. So that's a prime time really to be able to knock on someone's door. So 6 would be very difficult to defend.
What about 7?
7 is better. 7 is still vulnerable. And it gets more defensible the later you get. clearly when you get to 8, 9 o'clock, the kids are going to bed, and knocking on people's doors at those hours is
It's kind of
defensible.
creepy to have somebody knock on your door that late, especially in the wintertime. So
Agreed.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I would like to curb it back if we can to what anybody else feels comfortable with if they agree.
Well, I'd go to 5 o'clock. So I think, I'd go to 5 o'clock, so we'll stick with 8, I guess, I don't know.
Wait, you would go to 5, but stick with 8. Can we move it earlier? Would you be wanting to move it to 7 if we can?
I think Lake County does 7 for the county.
I believe that's correct. I think I looked at that, and it was 7 o'clock for Lake County.
I'd go with 7.
7. 7's better than 8.
What are your thoughts on there? Jim? Ellen?
I'd be open to 7. I don't think anybody's going to sue us over an hour. There's no way. I just don't see that happening.
I'm fine with 7.
Did you say, Ellen?
It's fine.
Okay.
7 it is.
And the rest of the items too that the chief had presented, is the board
think
pretty
they look great.
comfortable
I
with
think
that?
they look good.
Did it hit all your points that you were looking for?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for meeting with me
Nope.
earlier too. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, we'll put something together. Thanks.
Thank you. Can we put this on the consent agenda for the next meeting?
Yes, I'd like to.
Thank you. Now, a discussion on special event policy.
Mayor, Village Board, this is our second discussion here regarding the special event policy. Our previous meeting, we talked about an application process here, which the majority of the board was in support of. We had a couple minor comments on that application. What the board wanted a little bit more information on was related to the cost recovery for personnel services related to special events where we provide public works or police services. So we gathered some data from adjacent communities here, Algonquin, Barrington, Crystal Lake, Foxford Grove, Lake Zurich, and Woodstock to kind of give you a sense of what other communities are doing related to the chargeback of services. For the most part, you'll see there in the agenda item that the majority of those municipalities do have some sort of a chargeback, either for police, fire, public works, or all three. So just looking at any kind of feedback that the village board has related to the charging back of personnel, if you'd like to proceed with that. And if so, would we also want to look at potentially equipment too? So looking for your direction on how the board would want to proceed with this.
I think Trustee Cavelli asked for this. Do you want to talk about this?
I think that we should recoup. I mean, we just listened to a presentation about the pension. We're paid $100,000 coming up, and then it's going to be going up every year. So I think we should definitely look to recoup some of these funds. And I do think we should put in there with the equipment. And I think Algonquin is probably not that far off at 105 for the police. And then, I don't know what the public works rate is or anything, but I mean, that's what I'm accustomed to, so.
We had the rate schedule too. If you look at the attachment, when we discussed this previously, January 16, 2008, or excuse me, January 16, 2018, one of the exhibits here is a rate schedule of how that may look for our patrol, excuse me, our patrol officers, sergeants, public works, maintenance, 1 workers and maintenance, 2 workers.
Yeah, I think it's important, when the officers are out there, they're using the squad cars. Not only that, but if they get injured, now you have a workman's comp claim. So that's why I think you need to figure in some of those costs into that, not just the officer's base expense, but you need to offset some of that other stuff too.
Any other feedback on this?
I agree with Kim. I think we need to start charging.
Well, I think that if we're going to do that, we need to call in the different entities that would be affected by this to see if that impacts their ability to still host these community events. And then I think while we're looking at some of these things about charging, I think it's important that we look at, are these other municipalities also have a line item on their expenses for community events, for example? Just taking Crystal Lake, for example, I believe that they have a line item in their budget where they pay out to different organizations for community events. And if we're going to charge, I think we've got to look at the whole, if we're going to compare things, let's look at the whole entity. And then again, I just think we need to invite in the affected places just to let them talk about how this would potentially impact their ability to do these events.
I don't like comparing us to Crystal Lake, their home rule, we're not. We don't have the extra funds. We've been treating different entities differently all along, and I think this goes to an earlier statement by a resident that everybody should be treated the same.
I think, you look at the list of the events that we sponsor, or not we sponsor, I guess you can call it sponsoring. My fear is that a lot of these will end up going away because they're not going to have the resources to reimburse us. And I think the total number, I think that we've paid on an annual basis for in-kind services about $30,000.
Yeah, plus or minus, I think it's
I think
30, 35, I believe, for all services overtime related to police, public works.
I think that when you look at the cost benefit analysis and what we're doing for our community, this is a lot of these events that are on here are what make Cary. And it's important that we support the community in these ways. If we have to start charging for various things, my fear is that a lot of these things will go away. I know there's one thing on here I think that we charge for the Hillstriders Running Club. I think they're one of the only ones that we actually do charge right now. All the other ones, I don't think that we do, other than getting reimbursed from the high schools. I believe we already get reimbursed for the high schools.
Correct.
Yeah, but a lot of these other ones are community-based. They're not commercial-based. They're, in essence, bringing the community together for various activities. So I think that we are cutting our nose off to spite our face. So there's ways that we can work around these things and figure out a way to make it happen.
I just don't, which ones are you referring to that wouldn't, I'm not seeing it, I'm sorry. Which ones would not be held? Are you referring?
Well, I think the Mary Carey Parade, I think the Cary Grove Family Days, Main Street Fest, the March Wednesday Pay, cruise nights, that's an annual, that's a weekly thing. Cary Youth Baseball, they're continuously crying poor. The Park District activities, again, some of the chambers, heroes like Haley, I mean, these are all like the Rotary with the farmers market. I think that they're making ends meet here. And if we start adding to these things that when we start delving into these things, we're going to lose our sense of community. And I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of these other communities. And that's what I hear all the time is they love all these events that we do. And that's what makes Cary Cary. And I am in support in continuing on. We just need to make sure that everybody understands that there's a cost, and we just move on with these things.
We could certainly, as suggested, we could notify some of these agencies, or all of them, I should say, and see if they want to come in and talk before the village board, so you could get a better idea of how this is going to impact their event.
And I think sometimes, like with some of the stuff I probably already mentioned this with the baseball parade, as a parent who has a child in that, I mean, I'd be willing to help offset that cost with my own personal funds, because that's something I have my child involved in. But for somebody who may not have their child involved in the baseball, why should they have to pay those funds? So for me, personal responsibility, I would be fine for chipping in to have that police presence out there to make sure my kid can walk the parade and be safe and all that good stuff. So I think that listen, we just heard that presentation about how our expenses are just going to keep increasing with the police pension. if we're not willing to look at this and maybe make some adjustments and maybe think outside the box, then every year we're shortchanging ourselves this $40,000 that there's actually work being done by the village. And the village taxing body, out of all of these taxing bodies that we all pay into, we have a very small percentage. And it's split over police, over public works, over the village hall. I mean, I think these programs are great, but we also have to be realistic.
We're going to have to make some tough decisions. I mean, when it comes down to the budget, I mean, if you go back and we go back to our budget presentation, yeah, we've got some challenges coming up here with the budget for the foreseeable future. And it's not only this, but there's going to be other tough discussions that we're going to have this group, and we're going to have to make some tough and sometimes maybe not popular decisions. So I understand what people are bringing to the table here on both sides of this, and we'd be happy to contact these parties if we want to bring them in and hear from the affected groups, or if the board is ready to make a decision here now, we can proceed.
Well, Mark, you mentioned the total cost for all of these events for 1 year is about 30,000.
Plus or minus. Yeah.
Give or take, but it
Yeah.
covers the public works and the police.
Yeah,
In-kind services.
when we factor out all the hours for the police overtime on the far right-hand column, the police overtime and public works overtime hours, we're estimating, it's probably somewhere in that ballpark.
And then I know the past couple of years, we've had like $15,000 that we've given out to grant, money. Are we still doing that?
No.
And we gave money to heroes like Haley.
That's not in the budget.
So-
Yeah, that was
so we
removed from
cut
the
that
budget.
out.
Yep,
Okay, yeah,
correct.
that's definitely what I want to do. I mean, there's a few things on here I think we could look at and maybe call them in and say, the Cary Park District is on here. Why are we reimbursing the Cary Park District when they're twice as big and collect probably 3 times as much?
Tax funds.
Pardon?
Taxes.
Yeah. But in terms of Mary Carey Parade, the Main Street Fest, the Farmers Market, those were things I ran on. And I think, as was stated earlier, makes Cary Cary, and that I don't want to discontinue those events and run the risk of them not being part of Cary. So I'm in favor of continuing with the expense.
And I'm going to reiterate what Jeff said. I do think that it's our character, and I think sometimes you have to look at the overall picture and, realize that when you bring people into your community for these different types of events, someone getting in would be someone like, the guys from the tracks and from the, Kachina or the Ale House or all these places. When we host events like that, I think one of the things that we need to realize is that also generates more revenue that comes back to us.
Do we have anything that says that? Do we have anything?
I think, maybe what we
shows
should
us?
do is we should reach out and ask. I think that that's something maybe we could do.
We keep saying that, but I mean, to me.
Well,
it's
if we're
just-
gonna pursue this,
We're just making a statement, but we don't have facts to back that up.
if we're gonna pursue this, I think that it's prudent upon us to check into that and see if that is in fact true. Because I don't want to see, I do believe that this identifies, and these are things about Cary that people love. They love it. When you see how many people come through for these different events, they're amazing. They're wonderful events, they're community events, and I think that we want to keep that character for us. I think it propels people to want to come to be part of our community. And there's,
Well, how about this? Can we get the Citizens Police Academy involved in this, some of the volunteers, rather than using police services? Or the Police Explorer program? Some of these volunteers
Chief,
to
could you
cut
come
down
up
some of the
and,
expenses.
I've thrown that out too, but I think it's a liability thing or something.
Well, I don't know about that so much as having the authority to direct traffic. I don't think people from the Citizen Police Academy have the authority to direct traffic as a police officer does.
Sure.
And a school crossing guard, in fact, does have the authority to direct traffic. And I guess we could amend the code that would allow certain maybe individuals that you contract with to have that authority. But currently, we don't have the authority of the Citizen Police Academy. Flaggers do.
The cruise nights, do they direct traffic or are they more or less just there as a presence?
Well, they're there because of the police explorers, because they have an advisor there for the police explorers. Now, we do augment the one police officer that's at the cruise nights with Citizen Police Academy and police explorers.
And I've seen that too on the Carry Education 5K run. You know, the explorers or somebody was standing by the barricades, you know, manning those, but not directing traffic per se.
No. What they'll do is they'll staff a position, but they don't direct traffic.
Right.
And if someone pulls up to the barricade, they'll tell them what's going on and maybe an alternate route or an alternate means to avoid whatever the event is.
And even with the baseball parade, you know, they stand there at school in Maine and.
Right, yeah, but it's usually the minor traffic control points.
Correct.
Chris, do you have any?
I like Mary Carey Parade, I like Main Street Fest. I think that brings the community together, that I don't want to see them leave because we don't have police supervision.
Jennifer?
Well, my computer battery went out. It's been a long meeting. So I think there's like 5 different towns that we had gotten information on, and I believe all those 5 towns said that they do charge for police or fire or public works in some sort of capacity. I almost feel like this is an analogy, like, you know, at Christmas time, you'd love to buy everybody presents, and you just don't have money to buy everybody presents. And yeah, we love all our relatives, but we got to stop somewhere. So that's kind of how I feel. I feel like we should be recouping. The other communities are recouping. As Kim had mentioned, we just had a presentation with regard to the police pension. I definitely think that we need a church. And I'm not saying, I love all these things that are being done too. I'm not saying that I don't. Just saying from a financial perspective, I think that we should definitely charge.
I think some of these towns, you know, have bigger venues than we do, and I mean, they're sustainable. So,
Well, I'd like to find out because I know I talked to a couple of people that are in with Crystal Lake, that the Crystal Lake Chamber, for instance, they say that they get charged, but a lot of times they don't. They don't get an invoice. They just say don't. And then a lot of these other municipalities build that into their budget, like was mentioned before, but it's relevant. I mean, Crystal Lake gives chambers and other organizations tens of thousands of dollars every year. So
they also had $15 million to invest in the Three Oaks Recreational Center,
which is a losing cause. I mean,
right, but I'm just saying they're so different when it comes to what they.
Well, the same as Algonquin too. Their retail's ridiculous. I mean, it's awesome for them, but I mean, these are tough decisions that we have to make, and this next year is going to be filled with very difficult decisions. But to not encourage community events to continue that do bring extra people into our community, I think that's.
I'm not saying we don't encourage. I think we still encourage the community events, but just not. I mean, we're not profiting off of these events whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't like the assumption that these events just won't happen if they have to pay for these services. That just, I don't see that. I'm sorry.
Well, I think we need to invite people up then to find out about it.
Can I talk for a second? My plan was not to give a big presentation tonight about community events. I will come back and do that if you guys want. I just want to speak for a minute about community and the word community and the importance of community. I've lived here for 29 years. As most of you know, my name is Lynn Cacabello. I skipped that part. I am the executive director for the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce is made up of 425 business organizations, businesses, nonprofits, churches. I can guarantee you without hesitation that if some of this goes into effect, we will not be hosting all of these events. This is not something Chambers of Commerce do. We are one of the very few actually in the state and certainly in McHenry County that run all these I get people, businesses coming into my office all the time. They want to join. Their community is important to them. We stood up Cary Grove High School last night. The chamber was able to give away a $2,000 scholarship to the winner, $750, the first runner-up, $500 to the third runner-up. Tomorrow night, we're giving out two $2,000 scholarships. These happen because of these community events that we're able to host. We don't have to do these. We really don't. Crystal Lake does two, a community harvest and a parade. The parade, the village gives them over $60,000. Now, I know we're not Crystal Lake. I don't want to be Crystal Lake. We all don't want to be Crystal Lake. So I think we can say proudly that we have these community events. It's important to our residents, and they're great things, but they don't have to happen. The chamber and the businesses cannot shoulder the responsibility for what highlights this town. By the village's own videotape that highlights why everything is great in Cary, almost every chamber event is on there. So the Mary Cary Parade, we had 75 organizations participate in them. 90% of them weren't members. Our members can participate at no cost. Nonprofits can participate. It's an amazing thing. 3,000 people, 4,000 people, 5,000 people come in. I guarantee you those people go eat at the tracks. They come back. Cary Main Street Fest, same thing. It is the biggest promotion piece that the village of Cary could ever get. 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 people. We're on radio stations down in the city. We're at the Arlington racetrack. People know Cary because of these events. So, I can tell you as the executive director, as the person that sits and listens to the board, that we will have to dial back because we can't have all of our members that pay for all of this stuff. That's free. Cary Cruise Night, every single Saturday night, I'm out there with my staff doing all the marketing. On a given Wednesday, 900 people come through. Moms, dads, kids, dogs, you name it, people from all over. Had people coming from downstate Illinois last year, we keep track of it. This isn't something that has to happen. It's a huge burden on us as a chamber. I'm a staff of me and Amy. That's all we have, the two of us. And we run 6 community events, and not to mention all the other stuff that we do. So it is a huge thing for our board of directors to, if it's not important to the village, then we will, as a board of the chamber, have to decide, is it important for us, or should we shift our focus on something else? As a resident, I would be very sad to see that happen because it is about community first, and that's what makes Cary Cary. Cary is not Crystal Lake. We are not Algonquin. We are not McHenry. You can't just look at it and say, well, they don't charge for their in-kind services, because what you don't know is where they're getting the money from. Because McHenry Chamber gets money from different areas. Fox River Grove gets money from different organizations. So it offsets that. If the village of Cary said, well, we're going to charge you in-kind services, but here's our sponsorship, for this or that event, that's what most of these villages do. They may not have a line item, but the money comes from a different part of their budget. Because that's, for example, Cary Cruise Night, I have 20 different businesses sponsoring. They've all paid money. We've got new banners that are going to be hung downtown. So that's what helps offset this. It's not, 425 members cannot carry the cost of all of these community events that benefit everybody. People move into Cary because this is what Cary is. It's community first. The high school said last night when we were there, they want to call it the Cary Grove Community High School because that's what we're about. That's what's important to me. That's what drives me as a director. That's what drives our board for the Chamber of Commerce, is because community is important and the quality of life in which our businesses do business in is important. So, like I said, I'm happy to come back. We'll give you a beautiful presentation with slideshow and pictures and video. I just think it's not just as cut and dry as statistics on a piece of paper. I would encourage you all to look at the big picture for the Village of Cary and not just the numbers that you're seeing on a sheet, because it will change. It has to change. If it changed here, it would have to change at the chamber too. We couldn't carry on with what we have right now. I don't know what would go, but I can guarantee you that 2 or 3 will go for sure, without a doubt. It's just would have to happen that way. So,
Thank you.
any questions for me?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this?
The only other comment I would add is, again, I would just say, again, offsetting some of those costs, like an entry fee into the Main Street Fest, I would pay it. Halloween walk, if I'm doing that with my kids, I would pay it. It's just like the Park District programs. When I put my kids in the Park District programs, I pay for those programs because I want to do it. And I would look at this no different. And that, to me, could be then used back to the village to offset these costs. So I'm just saying that I would like to think outside the box and think of ways that we can make this happen where everyone is happy, where we're not losing 30 to 40,000 a year and we're not losing out on the events as well. I'm done.
Well, I have tried to get a consensus on this. Jim wants to charge. Ellen?
No.
Jeff?
I wouldn't look at it as losing, though. I think kind of you need to, like Lynn said, I think the benefits outweigh the costs in terms of the visibility for the village, people coming into the village, utilizing our services, our businesses. So I wouldn't really look at it as a loss. I would look at it as an investment. And that's so, no, I would like to continue with where we're going.
No.
I mean, we just had a presentation again from, and Mr. Spurl said that, I don't remember word for word, but, and the attorney did clear it up.
Taxes are going to go up.
Well, with regard to the police pension, and that Cary's, what did he say? Not a great place to live.
Place to live.
So, I mean, we keep shelling out money, and it's got to stop somewhere. And even if we do still continue to have these, I like how Kim said, let's find creative ways to go ahead and still keep these events and like find a way, like for
Number one
other people.
complaint from people in Cary, taxes are too high. Taxes are too high. I mean, would anyone agree that is the number one complaint, that taxes are too high?
Yeah, but when you look at the bang for the buck you get from the Village of Cary, that's...
That's opinion based.
Pardon me?
That can be opinion based. The bang for the buck that you get from Cary.
From the village, from what this board controls.
Right.
And we only control one of those line items, the
We just
pension
had
is...
somebody presenting earlier today who had a difference of opinion. So I'm just saying that, again, these are great events, and I would love to keep them too. And if, I like Kim's ideas, if you want to take your kid to the Halloween walk, pay $2 or $3 or whatever. I don't know how much it's supposed to cost, but
I wish everybody had your money, but the amount of
My
people that
money?
come to these things, there are so many people that can't afford to do this stuff. At baseball, when you say pay for your own baseball, there's people there that can't hardly pay the fees that they pay now for the baseball. It's nice that you feel you could pay to have the things you want to do to it, but to be blunt, you don't even come to those things. So I don't know how you could be taking that opinion. So I'm sorry. I don't agree with you guys.
Why should the elderly woman or man who doesn't even have a kid in these sports, why should they have to pay for my kid to be in that parade?
Because the community is better because of that sport. The kids all cohabulate, it's a community. It's all about the community. It's about your kid meeting a kid who isn't so fortunate. And the seniors that come there to watch the games and don't have kids in there because they remember their kids that used to play there. The community is awesome. We have a great community. I don't know why you don't take more pride.
I don't know why you get up here and say, I don't attend these events, because I was just at Cary Youth Baseball's parade last year. Are you taking, how do you know what I go to? I did volunteer at Cary.
How'd you like the Miss Cary pageant? Was it last night?
I did not go there, but I did like that there was also an option for Mr. Cary Grove too. I didn't know that, and I was like, oh, that's great too. I'm just saying
I'm
that
sorry, I
you're
go to a
being
lot of
rude
events,
by
I
trying
hardly
to
ever
call
see you
me
there.
out to
That's all
not
I'm
be at
saying.
every single event that happens in Cary. I'm glad that you can go ahead and go to everything, but I don't need you to get up here and belittle me because I don't go to how did I like an event that happened last night? I have a family, so I have a job, I have a family. I don't know where you get off coming up here and criticizing me on what events I do and I don't go to. So you can go ahead and sit down. You don't even live in Cary, but great, thanks. Thanks for your opinion.
Do I contribute to Cary? Am I an asset to Cary?
I'm just saying that you're rude. And
you consider me an asset? You consider me an asset?
continually get up
All
here
right, all right,
and you
okay.
call Jim names, you call me names, you call Kim names. Just stop, all right? And when you say that we're being rude, you're being rude.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Dave, you can
Have a nice
proceed.
evening.
Yes, you too.
Thank you. Well, from the consensus that I have, there's 4 people that support moving on with this, so I think that we will continue to look at other creative options to reduce our budget obligations, so that is done. I will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Actually, I need to.
4.
Pardon me?
4.
Yeah, for personnel appointment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees. Illinois 120/2C1.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Let's take a